I call the May 21st, 2012 Development Review Board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our last meeting, the May 7th meeting. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of May 7th.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any comments or changes, adjustments in the minutes? Brian, I have one or two. Firstly, we determined that Richard Perra wasn't here, so he needs to come out, and we believe that was Joe Pichek that was misdescribed as Richard Perra. And then that would need changing in application, or the minutes on application 2012-041. And then finally, on the last application, this is really just an arrangement of the paperwork. We did go into deliberative session before we came back out and made the motion, so you do have that, but somewhere further down the page on the copy of minutes that I have anyway. So you just need to reorder points 7, 8, and the fact that we went into deliberative session. I also think it was Stephen Page that proposed that we went into deliberative session. Was it? I think it was. And Catherine seconded it. So they're reversed.
Oh,
Was that the way or not? Am I wrong?
I don't know. I don't remember. That was the 7th.
You might like to check that.
That was 2 weeks ago.
It's 2 weeks back, yeah. So with those, any other changes in the minutes?
Not for me.
Okay, with those changes, all those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Those against? I abstain. So 1, 2, 3, 501. Thank you. Okay. At the DRB, we hear applications for land development in the town of Brattleboro and appeals of zoning administrative decisions. Procedurally, the Development Review Board operates on the record. Broadly, this means that we take a clear record of testimony from the applicant and any interested parties, and then issue a written decision with our findings. Applicants, members of the public should be aware that this is your opportunity to comment and provide evidence relating to an application. In the event of an appeal of our decision to the Environmental Court, the court will not take additional testimony later, but will look at the evidence from our hearings here, the regulations, and determine if the evidence supports this board's decision. So I strongly encourage all of you tonight to speak up at this hearing if you have a point that you wish to get put into the record. As we are on the record, we're going to ask that you affirm that your testimony will be truthful. So would anyone wishing, and would any of the applicants and anyone wishing as an interested party to speak to an application, please affirm the following. If you could stand. Thank you. I hereby affirm that the evidence I give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury. I do. Thank you very much. One other procedural note that we probably will have to deal with tonight, and that is that applicants require a majority vote of the board, of the full board, to succeed in an application. And the full board would be 4 votes out of 7. Tonight we will probably have some applications where there will only be 4 members of the board hearing that application because of recusals on the board. It is possible that one other member of the board may yet turn up, but should you wish to, any applicant who wishes to continue their hearing to a later date where there will be more members of the board to hear it, we will certainly consider motions to continue, and or the possibility that non-applicants of the board, members of the board that are not present tonight could view testimony on the BCTV tape, and then we will take a vote at a later date once they've reviewed that evidence. So that option is open to applicants should they wish it. Brian, can you confirm that the meeting has been properly warned?
It has been.
Thank you. I now ask members of the board for disclosure of conflicts of interest and any ex parte communications.
I have a few, unfortunately, this evening. On application 2012-043, Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. That's a client of mine and the firm, and I'll need to recuse myself on that matter. On application 2012-054, I wasn't aware, but it appears that the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation may be an interested party who has made recommendations to the board regarding conditions to that approval, and I'm a member of, I'm on the board of directors of BDCC, so I'll step down on that as well. Third, I am...
Popular guy.
Yeah. The Brattleboro Food Co-op is a client of mine in the firm, and I have represented them on matters relating to their construction projects. So I'll need to recuse myself on 2012-055. And oddly enough, I've been in contact with John Brunel's son, who may be here tonight. Hi there. And I may do work in the future for Mr. Brunel in connection with that project. And to avoid being accused of supporting projects in order to curry favor with applicants, thus to get their work, I will either sit on the matter tonight and recuse myself from working for Mr. Brunel, or I will recuse myself tonight and leave open the opportunity for Mr. Brunel to, but not the obligation for Mr. Brunel to engage my services. And I'll leave that decision up to John Brunel's son.
3 more, you could go home.
I was going to say, yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Dr. Chard.
As I did the last time the hospital had an item here, I reclused myself. I think I should do that again tonight.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Spoon.
Yeah, I'm a member of the food co-op and have an interest thereby, and a long-time member. But I will leave it up to the board to decide whether
Same for myself.
they feel.
Are you, we had this before in earlier consideration of the first part of the development, when the development plans were done, the original application. Are you investors in, oh, sorry, Spoon, are you an investor
well,
in the?
B2, I would have to as well, I'm a member.
Well, not as
Well,
well.
yes. I have loans.
Okay. Because I think that what we decided prior was that if you were a member of the co-op, that would not, just purely a, I'm not sure what the exact term is, a co-op member, then that would not necessarily exclude you from judging it. But as an investor, there is a different financial potential incentive there.
Well, I will accept whatever.
Okay, Catherine.
Well, we have to pay, the thing is that membership,
That's
Are
not,
you just a member?
yeah.
that's not considered
No, yeah, I'm
the
fine.
same level of investment. I have some loans in.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm fine.
Can I just, so on the first application we have a full board, on the second application we have two, we have
For
the hospital we have 4. So we would entertain an application, we'd like you to present anyway, but we would entertain an application to continue should you so wish. Mr. Parker, or Jeffrey Parker, we're okay. Atlantic Security is 1. So we got 5 there, that's a little better. The co-op we have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Spoon, I think you should step down for that. So for the co-op zoning appeal, I don't know who's here to... When that comes up, you've got a board of 4. You need a affirmation of all 4 votes. So should you wish to continue, we'll entertain that at the time. Marble dealership, we are okay, and John Brunel, we have 5. Potentially 5. 5 or 6. So we'll let that come when the time comes. Unfortunately, we have no alternates with us tonight to appoint to the board. Of 3 positions on the board that are potentially have alternates, 1-year positions. We only have 1 filled right now, and he is absent tonight. I put out a call yet once more for people to volunteer their talents and come and sit with the board so that we don't have these situations where we're tight, very tight, on making decisions. With that said, I open the public hearings and call application 2012-060, Robert Thibault and Hannah Parker. If you could come forward and... Please tell us about your project.
My name is Eric Morse. I'm a land surveyor who's working on this project. This is Hannah Parker, owner of property. This is a parcel on Brook Street. It's 25 and 29 Brook Street, which is just off of Canal Street. You're familiar where that is? It's a nice little side neighborhood there. This proposal is to subdivide this parcel to 2 lots. Maybe you can see it on your plan. Okay. There are 2 dwellings on the parcel. There's a existing house, and there was it's what's called the carriage house. It's a historic property, but the carriage house has been converted some time ago into a dwelling. So now there are 2 dwellings on the same property. The purpose is to just separate the 2 dwellings, each onto its own parcel. The subdivision meets all of the dimensional requirements of the residential zone, meets and area requirements. So that's our proposal.
Does it make the setback requirements? The little kink in there, that...
The little kink in there, the reason for that was to meet the frontage requirement. We had initially considered asking for a waiver or a variance on the frontage requirement, which is 60 feet. But we are able to get the 60 feet with that little jog in the line.
Okay.
And I'm sure we're happy to entertain that. Does that make any sense whatsoever to do it that way, other than
No.
for the frontage requirement?
No, it doesn't. So if
So
I could
the
easily
carriage
adjust
house
that.
would have property across the gravel drive in the front yard of the 4-unit dwelling.
Correct. And there would have to be
And you're just going to lease
maintenance
it.
easements
You're just
or...
going to lease it right back.
Right. So if you would entertain a waiver on 60 feet, nothing is going to change at the site. I mean, it's still a shared driveway, so it has no effect on how the property is used or will be used. And it would, I think that would be simpler, and I could easily revise this subdivision. All other requirements would still be met.
What would the frontage of the carriage house property come down to? Just
It
roughly?
would, roughly would probably be about 45 feet.
45 feet?
Yeah,
And 60 is the minimum in the district?
right. 60 for one dwelling, for multiple dwellings, for multi-unit dwellings, it's 80, but the other parcel has 94 feet. As it is, it would increase that to 110.
100 feet.
Yeah. But it would make more sense.
Especially here, because often the frontage requirement is meant to be a spacing requirement for access. And here we have a shared access, so maybe the condition would be the 60 feet is permissible for so long as you have a shared access, because then you only have one access on 154 feet.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
The, one of the issues that Public Works has raised is I guess at this point in time, there's a single water and sewer feed to these properties.
Yes, that's correct. Water and sewer comes from the larger house, 4-unit dwelling, and feeds the carriage house. We're in the process of applying to the state and having a separate hookup design.
So there will be a separate water and sewer feed
For the carriage
to
house.
the carriage house. Okay.
That's also one of the purposes of this subdivision, to really separate the two
Yep.
dwellings.
So at present, I guess there's no easement at present. We're not showing an easement between the properties, and there won't be one required because it'll have independent.
Well, there,
Water and sewer.
note 9 does, 9 and 10 both mention possible easements with this configuration. There will need to be a temporary easement for the water and sewer, which would be extinguished when the independent hookup was complete. And there would still be an easement for the shared driveway with a maintenance agreement, but it is common ownership now and will continue to be. This is just, straightening things out, but there's no current plan for selling either property.
Okay. Any other questions from any members of the board? Any questions from members of the public relating to this application? Speak.
I'd like to consider, is there anything in our way from a variance on the frontage? So we have
Waiver. Is what? A waiver.
Dimensional
A waiver.
Dimensional
yeah.
waiver.
Yeah, that's,
There's nothing that prevents us doing it.
well, that would be,
Yeah, I'd recommend that we do
Yeah.
that with the condition that the access to the property need to be shared, and if they ever want to split the access, then they need to revert to the minimum requirement in the district for frontage. Doesn't look like they're putting in a driveway anywhere else. in that
There
property.
really aren't any options, and I've seen the Sanborn maps, and it goes back. This place has been here for a long time,
Yeah.
and there's no change.
What if they don't get the thing from the state to do?
They'll get
They will?
permission to do it.
Okay,
That's a permitting process.
Right.
okay.
So with those changes, so we're going to I'll give you a dimensional waiver on the frontage, so you can draw a straight line through there.
Okay.
You'll need to update this plan to do that.
Yes.
We'll need the tax lot numbers put onto the plan
Okay.
when we have it split. We'll need notes 9 and 10 removed from the plan because there's no.
Well,
Well, it
they'll
might be
still be on the
temporary.
plan.
They might need temporary.
Okay. Yeah, and then there'll be a requirement that you get separate water and sewer to that lot. With those conditions, then looking for a motion to approve application 2012-060.
motion.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Okay.
Those against? I abstain. 501. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kathy, call application 2012-043, Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. You can have a cigar, Dr. Charlie.
Pardon?
You can go and have a cigar,
Yes, right.
or wherever it is.
Yeah,
whatever
well,
it is.
You brought a magazine.
I brought a magazine.
You did?
Yeah.
Hopefully I won't.
Hopefully it's a long one.
And Craig's the one who reads the magazine.
Please tell us about your application.
I'm Kathy Williams from Stevens & Associates, and we're here to present tonight an expansion of the emergency department at Brattleboro Memorial Hospital. I don't know where to stand so everyone
That's fine.
can see. This is just an overview of the entire project with zones Canal Street, Belmont Avenue, and Maple Street. This is the main building of the hospital, and the Richards building is over here. So what I've highlighted here is really the area of which that we're actually going to be impacting with the project. When the emergency department was originally constructed, it was meant to serve 6,000 patients a year, and now they have approximately 13,000 patients a year. So what they're proposing is to do a renovation, about an 8,500 square foot renovation in the existing building itself, and then having a small 2,500 square foot addition in the front of the building with an expanded canopy for people to come and drive and drop off, and then also having a small enclosure of an existing canopy in the ambulance drop-off area along with an additional canopy. The concept here is to kind of be separating emergency department ambulances, which would be coming here and be serviced here, from people who are coming to the emergency from people who would be coming to the emergency department itself. There would be an additional drop-off here, and an entrance to the emergency department would be here for patients, and then the main entrance to the hospital would also be over here. The other thing that we're proposing to do is to finally put in, when the Richards building was constructed, 5 years ago now? Yep. 5 years ago? A space was left in there for a permanent MRI, and we're going to be putting in, finally putting in that fixed unit
Could you
MRI
just hold,
in the...
Kathy, can you hold us for a second? Could, whoever's closest to the door, could you just pull the door to for us? Thank you. We don't have, wait, doesn't have to be sharp, but just, yeah, click it open. Thank you. Perfect.
This is just an expansion, a blow up of the area that we're talking about. Unfortunately, it's 90 degrees from the area we were looking at before. Here's Belmont Avenue, Canal, and Maple is here. This is just showing that there's some parking spaces here that would remain. There's also some parking spaces for emergency personnel, and then the ambulances would be coming here, and then the drop-off circulation would be happening in that area there. There's landscaping that's being proposed all around the building. It's really in the heart of the campus, so there's not a lot of, there's no screening. Landscaping that's being proposed is all more decorative at the entrance. We did do a lighting plan, and we provided some additional information for you on the photometrics of the lighting plan. We do have a few minor modifications to that plan this evening. Basically, we are proposing to use a fluorescent, or an LED light instead of a fluorescent light, which is better for the environment. And I'm just going to distribute that if that's okay.
Please do.
And we also changed the...
It's okay.
So we changed from fluorescent to an LED light underneath the canopy here, and there's also some sconce lights here on the support columns for the canopy that were up and down lit. We've just changed those to be down lit so that it's, up and down lit lights. The actual photogrammetry was actually a little bit less than what it was before. It was like an average of 1.7 before. Now it's down to like 1.6. But it's providing adequate illumination underneath the canopy there. The architecture, amazing things that the architects can do now. The SketchUp that basically almost looks like a picture. What this is doing is this is where the emergency department comes in. This is the drop-off area, and it's kind of showing you the labeling. This is where emergency patients would come in, and then this is where the main entrance to the hospital is with the canopy that's going to be covering people when they come in and out. I think that kind of briefly describes the whole project. I didn't know if you want to open it up for any questions that you might have.
You have anything to add, Rob, before we start?
No, nothing. Thank you.
We're probably going to we're going to have a few questions, that's for sure. Talk a little bit about So, at present, the existing emergency department, it has exactly, well, the ambulances come in that section there,
Correct.
and you have an MRI trailer next to that right now?
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Yep.
And then foot traffic or passenger traffic or small car traffic goes in on the normal rotary entrance there?
Correct.
Correct,
You
okay.
might come and drop someone off if they got a sprained ankle or something, they would go in and then you would go in,
Okay.
park and come back.
Now, the extension of, you said 2,500 square feet or some amount of, that's not the
25.
canopy you're talking about. That's a new section of building that's going to go in
In the front.
where the, kind of where the current canopy is, or to the
Correct.
left of the current canopy?
Kind of between the current entrance and the current canopy, in
Okay.
that little grassy area.
So you're bringing the face of the building forward some, I don't know how many feet, but
Exactly.
some number of feet.
Exactly.
Okay. And then I would presume there's a kind of a walkway entrance that you go through where the currently under the,
Currently, right. there's
that
just
would
a little
become a part of the
Building.
building.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The
Um,
back of the sidewalk would basically be the front of the building now.
Okay. Now you talk in the application about adding parking spaces for emergency room staff.
Right.
Where are they going?
They're right here. And that's not for emergency room staff, that's for if they needed to have a police cruiser needed to come, because they needed to come, they could come and park right here and go in. If it's a mental health worker that needs to be called in and come, they can park there. It's actually not for people who are on call or on staff
Okay.
that day.
It sort of looks like those type of personnel would park in the existing parking spaces that are there anyway right now. on
The
the-
personnel who are
Well,
working there now?
if you had a police cruiser that had to turn up,
If there was an
where would they
emergency,
par-
they just want to park as quickly as possible to get in if there was a patient who
okay.
had a situation.
In that area right now, are there not, there's some sort of terminals that people can plug into there?
Yes.
And
There
what-
are the
What are they? That's a
anti-idling kiosks.
idling kiosks?
Yeah.
Right, they're for the ambulances too, so the ambulances on hot days or cold days don't have to leave their engines running. They can just plug into these kiosks and maintain the equipment without having the engine running.
So these new parking spaces are going where those kiosks are, or they're going further down, or?
We're going to continue to use the kiosks, and Kathy can explain how they're going to be
I'm
located.
going to point them out to you.
Okay.
The two kiosks, one's right here and one's right here right now. The one that's here is going to be staying, so the ambulance would come and stay right there. And then the other one is going to be relocated over where the portable MRI is, so they would come in and park here.
Okay. So the portable MRI is in this area, which is called emergency area right now?
Yes.
That's not, that area there will, presumably the MRI goes, or that trailer vehicle goes,
Yes,
and that space is not being changed in any way? You're not developing that space? It'll still be open space there
correct,
with parking for a ambulance vehicle?
exactly.
Okay. So, are we narrowing on figure 1, which is the page you've got there? You're narrowing down that access for those ambulances by creating those parking spaces and some islands by the look of it.
This width is actually the full 60 feet like you would have in a parking lot. It has two 12-foot wide aisles going back and forth. There's a little bit of a necking down to 20 feet in this area here before you get to the parking, and then it widens out.
But let me ask, if you had people parked in the normal parking spaces that exist right now, and you had 3 police cruisers
You could
parked, you
yeah.
would be necked right down there.
No,
It would
you'd have
narrow
20
right down
You'd have 24 feet to come through
all the way.
all the way. We're also expanding, you know, there's a retaining wall that's out there now. We're also proposing to make that a little bit bigger so to provide additional turning movement for the ambulance right now. So
That was really my question. Is that it looks like that area has become that much more crowded or cramped in there, but maybe I'm misreading this diagram.
It still has, we've actually run the auto turn on it with an ambulance, the largest ambulance that Rescue has, and there's no problem with getting an ambulance in.
And a fire truck.
A fire truck would just come in, they're not going to turn around.
Okay. And then over that section, over the ambulance section, you're putting a new canopy in there?
Yep.
Well, what's basically happening there is we have a dock area for our
Yep.
ambulances, and one ambulance in particular can't use the dock. Ambulances these days are being designed so there are no docks involved on the discharge of passengers, the theory being that when you pick up the passenger, it's not on a dock, so we don't expect or need the ambulance to back up to a dock. So we're going to take that dock area, incorporate that as part of the emergency room renovations, and then the ambulances will now be a little forward of that, and we will regrade up so that it's an even slope and there isn't a dock or a lip there between the entrance for the patient and the ambulance.
Just like a 9-inch lip right now, the concrete under the canopy in the rear of the...
Okay, so you're basically saying that you're moving the ambulances out by some amount and then grading it.
Exactly.
Okay. Talk to us just a little bit about the landscaping. The landscaping in that area I've always found kind of quite nice. You've got lots of herbaceous plants. It's a big effort to make that look very nice there.
Yep.
You're going to presumably continue with that look and feel? Or?
Yes, we are. In fact, one area that I particularly don't like is where we have those low junipers. We're going to be getting rid of those and doing some other plantings right there, yeah, at that island, right where you would go either into the traffic circle, so to speak, or toward the ambulance entrance of the ED. So we're going to be doing some more planting, some different kind of plantings over there.
Okay. And that's on, where are we, C3, is it?
C6 is the landscape plan.
Are there any other changes to your landscaping there, or trees, bigger trees going in, or?
There are some changes. There are some trees when we're expanding this area down here. There's a tree that needs to be removed. There's some trees here in the expanded area that are going to need to be removed for retaining wall. So there's some additional tree plantings that are going on here in addition to having some larger tree plants.
And one particular tree there is actually needs to be removed anyway. It's a very nice crab apple, but it's rotting from the inside out. So it has some problems.
Yeah, the other thing that that Rob was talking about with the regrading, it's not just happening here, but it's also happening in the front. Because once we moved the first floor elevation of the hospital to the back of the sidewalk, we still have to grade back down into everything that's going on in the rest of the area here. So there's a lot of this area that's all getting disturbed from regrading in order to meet the first floor elevation that used to be back here, and we could take up with some grade in that sidewalk, but we can't do it anymore, so we have to start dealing with it out here.
Okay. Talk to us a little bit about stormwater management.
The hospital has...
From the new canopy, you now have a larger canopy area, and you've got...
The hospital has a state stormwater discharge permit, so we have to get a stormwater discharge permit for this project that's already been submitted. What we have is the soils at the hospital are very good, so we have an underground infiltration chambers that are being proposed here that are going to be accepting the runoff from the canopy and the expanded area.
And those are new chambers?
Those are new chambers.
I've been new chambers underneath that.
Underneath this vegetated area.
Okay.
On C4, I think you can see it.
Yeah, okay, got it. And there are existing infiltration chambers under the road somewhere?
Correct. There's an existing chamber here, and then there's two other ones that are in the main parking lot.
And they are being impacted in any way by this development?
No.
They'll just still take the water it gets now?
Yeah, actually they get a little bit less water because all of this area right now kind of goes into this basin, but we're diverting it and putting it into this basin. So it'll see the same or less, actually less.
Okay. Can we just go back over the lighting again?
Sure.
I thought the lighting description in the application was very good. I had let's not call it a problem, but an issue with fluorescent lights uplighting, which you've now changed.
Right.
Those uplights going from like the lower canopy to the upper canopy, they're not going to be visible from anywhere in this parking lot, are they?
No.
It's going to be sufficiently tilted or hidden so that it's purely uplighting?
There's actually two levels to the canopy.
Yep.
There's a lower level that goes over the sidewalk, which is approximately 10 feet, and then there's the bigger area that goes
Yep.
over the main parking area, which is 14 feet. That does have cutouts in it, but the way that the lights are going to be directed is they're going to be underneath this area here of the lower and directed to the
upper.
to the upper and coming down. We've actually run some extra calculations. Act 250 had a question about that as well. We ran some additional calculations to show that light wasn't going to be coming through. It's not going to be directed through that opening.
Okay.
And we had to work with the engineers because we didn't really want to mix the fluorescents and LEDs, but the engineers at first were having trouble finding a light that met the architect's desires, and they finally came up with an LED because I didn't want the fluorescents either.
So now, all of that lighting, let's just stay with the canopy lighting. All of the canopy lighting is LED
Correct.
of some
All
form or
All
another.
the
Yes.
lighting, all the
Okay.
proposed lighting, including site lighting.
Yeah.
What about the site lighting? You're moving site lighting or relocating site lighting? Or parking lighting? Or
Yep. Actually, I think we're moving some and then ending up adding another one. We have a site light that's going to be proposed here, 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 and here. Right now, there's not, I don't believe there's one in this particular area. And again, that was all included in the photometrics that were submitted.
so you've got
5 site
5
lights.
going in and there's 4 existing, so it's a relocation of those lights.
In a sense, yeah.
Okay.
we're providing
And
that.
they are, how tall are they?
I believe it's 15 feet from the bottom of the fixture to finished grade.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to me, can you just tell me that you're talking about removing the sidewalk or the path from the,
From Canal Street up to
Yeah.
the hospital?
before I'll make my observation of that real quickly. As I paid a little site visit to this, and in my site visit, in 15 minutes, I saw one person walk up, one person walk down, and somebody bicycle down. So this is an active, the bicycle was straight out of the parking lot and,
Scary.
and over the edge. Luckily, there were no skateboarders, but it seems to me that, what's the reason for removing something which is clearly by my observation, a common access?
Well, do you want to address that from the stormwater standpoint?
Well, there's a couple of issues. One of them is the steepness of the grade. You're not meeting ADA, and if we're actually impacting a section of it at the end. So in order for us to reconnect in, we end up having to have some type of switchback in order to meet ADA, in order to bring it back up to this grade here. So that's obviously was a big issue. The other issue is we're kind of limited in the amount of impervious that we can construct on the site without having to construct stormwater treatment measures, which we were hoping not to have to do anything additional to what we had here. So we might be able to do something with porous concrete. So it's not.
So it
not a deal
doesn't
breaker.
become an impervious issue.
Exactly.
How
But
close
it's
are you
still-
to the impervious requirements now? Are you so close that one path, one
Yeah.
concrete? Really?
Yeah.
Honestly,
You're within
I'd
points?
have to do something in addition. I'd have to. I'm actually taking advantage of a conservation easement in the forested area here. We're actually going to an individual permit so that we can take advantage of some site balancing on the property, meaning treating something over here so that we don't.
Have
It's
to do it
easier
there.
to treat than trying to treat something over here that's more difficult to treat.
We typically haven't seen as much traffic as you see, and also I'd like to point out that that is not maintained in the winter because it's so steep. So it is a summertime only path, spring, fall, summertime path.
Is there an alternative location for it?
The problem, I printed this out and I included the topography. As you saw in your site visit, this is very steep topography, and then even coming down here. So the only place that you could even start connecting in through an ADA accessible would be over here, and you already have an existing access coming over here.
Yeah. So if that was the case, someone would walk all the way to Belmont Street, turn around, and come back in. I mean, seriously, I didn't pick my time. I just turned up, and
I believe it.
and that's what I saw in the space of 15 minutes. So
Well, I think you're not going to be able to meet ADA without a lot of, like I say, switchbacks here in order to get us back up to this elevation. because we're impacting it. That road got moved over.
Is it a requirement that that path meets ADA? I mean, you have an ADA capable access through Belmont. I mean, it's on the level.
It gets a little complicated when you're actually doing new construction and you're impacting something. They may make us do an ADA access for that section that we're impacting, not necessarily the whole thing. But because we're actually impacting the area, I wouldn't be surprised.
How much are you impacting it? Just a little tiny bit, like 6 feet?
Yeah, it's just a little tiny bit, but the slope there is, you know, a good 15+%.
And continue.
Sure.
I guess it's of some interest to me as well because I am a pedestrian. I don't own a car. And I, as many people, do approach the hospital from the east, up
Canal Street.
coming uphill. And I've made many trips to the hospital over the years, and I've always been cognizant and often annoyed that the hospital complex has grown to become a very large block, and there's no access from the rear either. And so it seems it requires walking, even though most of the population would be arriving. And of course, I acknowledge there isn't a lot of pedestrian. Well, I don't know, actually, how much pedestrian traffic. I mean, certainly a person in an ambulance or an illness is probably not walking. But there are lots of visitors who may be staff workers, etc., who may be. I just wonder how many, that there might be several hundred people a day, 100 people a day at least, who walk to the hospital. And
But not necessarily from this direction. It could be coming from this
well,
direction.
true, yeah, but it's just striking me as the hospital PUD keeps expanding, it becomes a larger and larger impenetrable block of land for a pedestrian, particularly since there's no access from the rear either.
Isn't
for
there
reasons.
access from the rear?
There's a lot of slope on the northeast corner. That area there's a very high grade there. People coming up from town could also come up the Cherry Street or something like that to get to that area if that was convenient from that neighborhood. There is access, there's the pathway we put in as part of the Richards building, which is also a permeable concrete path which comes from Maple Street,
Comes up here.
right, like that. So we have that path for people if they were to walk up Cherry as opposed to, say, for Canal Street. So we do have that access available. But granted, I mean, if you're coming up Canal Street, you do basically have to walk by the hospital and then go back in to get to the hospital. There's no question about that. And there's a lot of the challenges there are grading. The areas along Maple Street, other than back by the Richards building, are truly service entrances. So you're coming in through, there's a loading dock area there, and so there's that sort of work that's going on in that area there. So they're truly back entrances for service.
Well, yeah, I understand the service entrance because I've looked around for a way to get in. And
It's Fortress BMH.
yeah. Well, it's not.
I think we're going to ask you to keep an access of some sort, a pedestrian access of some sort, from Canal Street, from the northern portion of Canal Street. I think this point has a good point. It's just we have to, on some level, be pedestrian friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Even if it's not handicap accessible.
correct.
Well, by not having anything at all is obviously not handicapped. So
Well,
I don't see
You go like that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
some access, but you're right, it's longer.
penalizing all the non ADA needed.
Yeah, I think as long as there is ADA accessible entrances there,
There are, and if somebody,
that fulfills what we may consider the ADA requirement.
Well, I guess, in a sense, when you're along the roadway, obviously the sidewalk doesn't have to be ADA, because it can match the roadway. And then when you come here, this is all ADA.
That's flat, yeah.
It gets more, it's more elaborate, it's more expensive, of course, but I've thought a path that came up more gradually from the upper zone 3, that east, south, I don't know.
Northeast.
Turned around there. Yeah, right where your finger is. From that corner, winding up in the easiest possible slope that there is to...
Spooner is very steep up through there.
Well, yeah,
The existing...
Retaining walls here, too.
I've walked over it, snow and not.
The current path takes the sort of the easiest route as it is right
Okay.
now.
Well, I figured exactly where it is.
What would happen if you put a small path to the parking lot that you have down behind the new entrance for the new building there? That would be a very short, right onto Maple Street.
Well, I'm sorry, say that?
Oh, that's also very steep, coming down,
Yeah.
say, right,
Oh, right here? Yeah, there's the retaining wall there, so there's...
No, you have the new building,
Richards building?
yeah,
right.
and you have a back parking lot that goes behind the building. If you put a walkway just to the parking lot and then come up through that way, from Maple Street.
Well, what we could look at doing, because we are actually looking at doing, to request our neighbors some upgrade to this area here, what I suppose we could do, instead of this, if you thought that would be helpful, would be to maybe put something that could choke it down. Right now we have the cable across there.
Yep.
So if we did maybe 2 cables or something like that, so there'd be a walk path, but instead of, so people could walk through without having to walk over,
Right.
we could do something like that, and then the cable could be removed by the fire department, because as you might recall, that's a fire department access. So we could do something like that, if that would be better.
Well, if there isn't an entrance in the
swamp.
rear of the building, it's not really helping.
Well,
Yeah.
there's an entrance to the Richards building here, so for outpatient services, it's useful if you're going to the Richards building for outpatient services, blood draws, certain x-ray procedure, physical therapy, MRI.
Can you walk through the Richards building into the
Yes,
the rest of the hospital?
yes, there is
So you can
interior
use that
connections.
as a public entrance then?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so there is a rear entrance now then?
Well, we could, yeah, there is, but it's not, it's very obtuse because of the fact that there's a cable across there. If
Yeah.
we did something else to keep the car traffic out, but made it pedestrian friendly, that would work.
I'd still like to see the access to Canal Street.
Yeah,
I just
I agree.
watched people using it today. I think one of them was staff. Does the board have any other questions for, any member of the board have questions before we open to the public? Okay. Any member of the public like to comment on this? Dick de Grey. Please,
The idea,
please, introduce yourself.
Dick DeGray. Actually live on Maple Street. I would be really opposed to putting in a entrance where that auxiliary entrance is to the Richards building. One reason is there's not a crosswalk there, and that's kind of a blind corner when you are heading east, coming down Maple Street, and coming around that corner, trying to put a crosswalk in there with the pedestrian problems that the town is having, I think would be very problematic. I think that any access way that you were talking about earlier, where they do have that path up that they don't maintain in the winter is probably a much safer route than trying to put an entrance and a crosswalk right where that auxiliary actually entrance is to the back of the hospital. So I would really think about that and probably oppose that all the way through, even to traffic safety, because I don't think that's a safe place to have a pedestrian crossing.
Well, to that point, there's no sidewalk on that side, so it
That's
doesn't
right.
make it possible to cross.
They'd have to walk up Maple
Right,
Street
so
and then
you
cross.
would, to your point, I would agree that if you did it, you would want to put a crossing right there, and I also agree with the way the road curves there. It's not the best place for a crossing, so I would
Thank
agree
you.
with those points.
Any other members of the public wish to speak to this application?
I don't, it had never occurred to me, I just imagine all the traffic that I speak of, the foot traffic is walking up the same side of Canal Street. So I don't follow why there needs to be a crosswalk on Maple, is that what you're talking about? Right, well, there isn't one there now because it would be dangerous to cross. So I don't see why you would, because you put a footpath, why you would put in a crosswalk in a place that's already deemed unsafe.
That's his point. That's his point.
That's why you wouldn't put in a crosswalk. When you're walking up Canal Street, you hit the intersection of Maple Street and Canal Street. You're talking about an auxiliary entrance into the back of the hospital, which there is in the Richards building. So to access that, you'd have to travel actually west up Maple Street. There's sidewalk on one side of Maple Street, and you go across Elm Street, and then there are three houses, and that's where that auxiliary entrance is to the Richards building, where they were talking about the cable goes across.
Spoon, the
So
issue
that's
is
if you're talking about putting a walking path there.
there is no sidewalk on that side of the street.
Yeah, okay, I see, I wasn't thinking, I was thinking of the pathway through the undeveloped area, Zone 3. I didn't realize you were up on Maple Street.
Yeah, he was up on the back entrance.
Okay, no, I wasn't,
Okay. Well, I got a couple of other questions for you. In relocating the MRI structure, we are making changes to the Richards building to accommodate that?
Interior.
Okay, what about, there was talk in this application about adding cooling and air conditioning
Oh,
systems
yes, there are. Those will go
on the roof?
that addition. No,
I can
no.
actually show you. Where they're going, this is the Richards building here. And
Yep.
between the Richards building and the pavilion, there's a grass area. There's a relatively flat area directly adjacent to the Richards building, and that's where the chiller unit and the condenser units are being proposed.
And this is not on these plans?
No, I have a plan here to show you those locations.
Okay, please
right
do.
here. I talked about it in the narrative, but I
Yep.
didn't show you.
Well, we spotted it.
You spotted it? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I wrote it, so.
And then we're also doing Local Act 250 for you, correct?
Correct.
This application?
Correct.
So we have to talk about impact on,
There's not anticipating to have any new employees directly related to this project, so there's no impact to the school system, so there's no new employees, there's no children related to new employees.
impact on municipal services?
Everything is being serviced by them now. The increase is very minor, and they're not going to have any increased impacts to the municipal services. I believe Ricky Thier and Mike Ducassi have also signed up. They didn't have any issues on the project.
Impact on the fire department, none. Impact on public works, none. Impact,
Noise?
character of the neighborhood?
I think most of this is actually developed already.
Yep.
So we're just kind of expanding a little bit, but it's all being redone. And it's really kind of in the heart of the campus. You have the grade change on Canal Street, which really kind of isolates this area. You also have the Dunn building and some planting and some smaller buildings that are kind of diverting the eye from it in this direction from Belmont Avenue. And then, of course, you have the main hospital building blocking it from Maple Street.
Okay, and it's in conformance with the town plan?
Yes. They love the hospital.
The town plan loves the hospital?
Big employer in town. They love the
Okay.
hospital.
No change in traffic? We're already up to 13,000 visitors a day, I'm hearing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So the analysis that was done on Belmont and Canal basically is reflecting that current traffic load. They did run some calculations just saying what would you get from these small little expansions, and I think they had like two vehicle increases in the AM, PM peak, and then 3 in the evening peak.
So the prior traffic study holds? There's no significant changes to...
Correct.
to-
There's no, it's like less than 0.5% change
Okay.
to anything happening at that intersection. And that was a resource system bridge that was done.
Okay, and what about, there's no change to circulation on the site?
Correct.
We're just modifying
Separating the ambulance.
we're just separating the ambulances out, so
That was-
there's no change to the flow of traffic on the site, there's no change to the entrance or anything like that?
Not this entrance down here.
No.
No.
What about signage? Are we
Um,
changing signage in this new scheme, or are you,
They do need, they're talking about having a particular sign somehow related to the canopy, whether it's going to be up on the canopy or down here in the island, but that's something that we're going to do separately because they haven't finished the design of it right now.
okay.
So we're not including it in this package. So they need to get a sign.
What about traffic signage on site? Stops, giveways, that's all, is that detail? I mean, I didn't go through and pick each one out, but the traffic flow is...
The traffic flow is the same. We're basically relocating signs that got...
That already exist?
That already exist.
Okay.
The only sign, we are adding a sign here that says emergency, limits people, the general public can't park there for the emergency personnel only. So there, on C3, I believe, is a list of the, shows the signs that are being proposed. And then, of course, any handicap parking space needs to have that handicap sign, but those are handicap parking spaces now, so.
You had a question about noise.
The new, the new units going in, are they going to create much, if any, more noise for that area?
That's a good question. There is some mechanical equipment that's being placed on the roof of the emergency department, which is part of the emergency department project. That is being located adjacent to existing equipment or is replacing existing equipment. And there's no, there's not going to be a discernible new noise source associated with that. These units here, we did a calculation that the decibel level of the chiller is the loudest, and that's like 78 decibels, but by the time you get to the Thompson House, it's down to like 50, and then by the time you get to Maple Street, it's down to like 50.
And we're trying to be sensitive, especially in light of our last meeting that we had about the view of that equipment from Maple Street. So we're trying to locate it either tucked further away so it won't be seen from Maple Street, or we're going to put some landscaping in front of it.
Your plan is showing landscaping.
Correct. This is some arborvitae that we're proposing.
Okay. Any member of the board have further questions for the applicant? Spoon,
No, I'm all set.
you're set. Stephen, you're set. Any member of the public wish to add any further comment to this application? You have an opportunity. You have a job opportunity at this point to ask us to continue the hearing or to close the hearing and allow non-present members of the board to review the testimony, or we can take a vote.
I think
You're okay?
Yeah.
we're going to go with door number 3.
Yeah, door number 3. Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve application 2012-043, Brattleboro Memorial Hospital PUD site plan and local Act 250.
So moved.
Are you not having them leave that pathway there?
They are, yes. They're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the changes discussed, sorry. Oh, someone,
The sidewalk.
Specifically with regard to
Yeah.
the sidewalk.
From Connect.
there may be some other minor stuff that comes out, but that would be the significant
Like move
change.
the hospital 5 feet to the left, some minor thing like that?
Yeah, we're good at that.
Use a
It's
little
up-
bit of the street.
As you know, it's our discretion. You get the surprises later. So I've got a motion. I have a motion, and who seconded it?
I will.
Thank you, Stephen. All those in favour? Aye. 400. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I call application 2012-052 and also Craig Miskovich. And can you send the boys in? If you can find Craig and Dr. Chard. 2012-052, Jeffrey Parker. Please come forward and tell us about your application.
We're here to seek approval to keep a pet RIA on our property.
Just hold 1 second. Let's get the.
Okay.
We're missing two members.
Dr. Chard was asking me what a RIA was, so he
You had to tell him.
Yeah, he definitely wants to be here for the first part.
You know,
Too. Oh, there we go.
there's
It's adorable.
a healthy rear specimen.
Okay.
I don't know. It looks healthy. Don't you think?
That's a RIA.
He's healthy.
That's the front of the rear.
Ah.
Okay.
His name is Pizza.
Is that what he eats?
No,
Pizzeria?
that's his fate.
Oh.
It's a white
Ultimately.
ostrich.
Okay. So, please tell us why you're here.
We're here to seek approval to keep a pet RIA on our property at 46 Fairground Road. As you can see, there's a picture of him. We have fencing up. Keep him in. We were told he was considered livestock. He's 17 years old. He's obviously not being raised for livestock.
Can you inform the board? We deal with all sorts of things. We deal with chickens. We deal with doves, goats, pigs. Sort of what one might consider to be common New England livestock. Tell us about rears, will you? And we can sort of roughly see what it is. It looks like a bird.
He's a large bird, probably 50 to 60 pounds. Probably stands close to 5 feet tall.
Yep.
I'm not sure how much. He's from South America. He's lived in Hinsdale for the previous 17 years. So I'm not sure. Do you have anything to add? No?
He doesn't make any noise.
Yeah, he's silent.
Very quiet.
Can't fly.
What do they eat?
Pretty much anything.
They eat anything?
Dog food. We have emu food for him, corn.
Vegetables, bread,
Yeah.
leftovers.
He's not
scraps,
picky.
Like chickens.
And you would consider him a pet?
Yes,
Is he a pet?
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay. And as a part of this application, you're asking for permission to keep him where he is, and you want to construct a shed or excuse me, a house
shelter
or
for
some.
him.
One question, will this application limit the applicant to a single RIA? What happens
We
if
can-
you want to get a partner for it?
No.
We can determine that it's one.
I know it's one now.
No, but we can determine that.
Oh, all right.
We can condition
It's
that.
only
Sorry.
one forever, probably. They live sometimes to 40 years old in captivity.
Do you still have the chickens there?
Yes.
Yes.
But with the fence, they're not out in the road anymore?
No.
Do other folks raise RIA for meat or eggs, or do they have a livestock
That's
purpose?
what we've heard.
Yeah, we've read that, but we haven't actually seen that ourselves.
Okay.
This is the first RIA I've ever seen myself.
And when did you get the RIA? When did you get pizza?
About 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
Did you adopt him?
Yes.
Yes, it was a kind of a rescue case.
Okay. And what's this, just for me, what's the size of the rear house that you're proposing? It says it actually says birdhouse, but
Well, we have a lean-to currently off of our chicken coop, and it's actually a pretty large lean-to, and we were thinking of just turning that into his shelter. He doesn't really like to go into shelters. In fact, his previous owner said he had to be forced in the winter into, and he had a full-blown shed, like a barn, small barn,
and he had to be forced into it. He really likes to sort of weather under the trees. He just squats down and fluffs up his feathers. And what we've read is that they really only require a 3-sided shelter, so that's what the lean-to is.
And so, Brian, precisely what are we deciding? Are we deciding this is a pet, or what have we done with chickens and such are now out of our hands and they're decided by the zoning administrator, aren't they?
Yes, there are. You could decide that this is a pet and it doesn't need a permit, that it's a small, inoffensive animal similar to other domestic animals. But if you were to do so, it would likely to be a more categorical decision. And you might want to have continued board review if other people come forward trying to keep RIAs.
And so small, inoffensive animals similar to typical domestic animals, one does not need a permit for those. Even if it's a dog, even if it's outside, and even if it has a little dog house.
Yes, that's right.
How about the chickens and goats these days? Do those come before us still, or is that administrative approval?
Chickens get administrative approval and goats would get board approval.
Because they're livestock.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have the ability to approve livestock in any district now?
Yes.
Even downtown? Urban centre? I don't think so. Doesn't matter.
It would be at your discretion.
Sorry? Goats?
Brooks House chicken coop.
You could work on it.
Would you allow a goat in the Brooks house?
I think so.
If it pays me $17 million to reconstruct the building, yes.
It's gone up. It's
Into
expensive
the
goat.
Brooks
You have to have a goat that does something with gold.
Better make good cheese.
It seems to me that... Are you, Brian, suggesting that we just deal with this one case only? Don't determine that RIAs are pets, but just give this one a permit?
I think it would be preferable if you didn't do anything that would create
Precedent.
precedent that people just have them as pets.
Determine that the unique characteristics of this particular RIA, Pizza's personality, his disposition, training, education, and the like, makes him a suitable inhabitant of the neighborhood.
Well, I think particularly the age. I think there was some concern that a younger bird might be harder to contain because they're
Does it jump? Does it want to get over the fence?
powerful animals. No, he's
No,
not.
it's a
They're
like
strong.
an ostrich or an emu. It's landlocked. It's land. It runs.
Yeah.
If it does anything, it runs. It doesn't
Right.
fly.
It doesn't fly.
Not. What does it make? Does it call for
A
this
mate.
long lost mate?
No, he's just completely silent.
Huh?
Pretty
And-
good partner, really.
Gets
See-
along really well with the chickens and the dog.
Oh, good.
And the droppings, feces, just
We're just throwing that in the compost,
and
like we do with the chicken manure.
but not a cat. You don't have a separate like area,
No,
just
no.
somewhere in the yard.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's very similar to chickens, I would think, in that aspect. Just
just
manure.
a little bigger.
Okay, would any member of the public like to speak to this application? Okay. Further questions from the board? Anyone?
I just can't
Looking-
believe
okay, I'm looking for a
everybody
motion
knows
to-
what it is.
Approve application 2012-052, Parker application to keep a rear. I think we'll limit it to a single bird, so we don't suddenly find there's multiple rears down there. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Wait a minute.
What, you have a change?
I think we ought to allow 2 reuse.
Why? There's only one here.
I know.
This is
I
a.
just feel-
If somebody wishes to come before us and apply for 2 rears, they can do that.
Yeah.
In this case, they have one.
Why can't that be an administrative
Multiple.
decision? Not multiple, 2, up to 2 readers.
I recall testimony from the good folks at Fairwinds Farm that having a second rooster changes the behavior of the first considerably, and we have not had sufficient expert testimony on the personality changes that competition will have amongst the rhea breed.
Population.
Oh, you laugh. Roosters are quiet unless you put in
Do
a
you put
second
two
rooster.
there?
Then they get
Yeah,
all
then they go nuts.
excited.
If one's named
Let's
Pizza,
leave
what
it
do
at
they
one,
name the other one?
All right,
Okay,
all right. 1.
a limit of a single bird.
Moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded. Who did that?
I moved.
He's moved. Seconded from the end. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Abstain. 501. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You get to
Read
put up a
it.
lean-to for your bird. Okay, Ms. Komiskovich,
You're out.
you're out.
I am.
I call application 2012-054 Atlantic Security Corp. Please come forward and tell us about your application.
My name is Bill Fitzgerald, and I'm the surveyor.
Hi, Bill.
Representing Atlantic Security. This is a proposed 3-lot subdivision on Putney Road. It's, you're all familiar with the area, probably. It's the...
Could you just pull the microphone towards Thank you.
It's the Lamplighter Motel Annex building, and the house that's just to the south of that, next to the credit union. There's 2 existing buildings there now, the Motel Annex and the white house, and they're proposing to put in a 3rd lot behind the house, which would be serviced by an existing driveway between the motel and the house. It meets all the requirements for the zoning, setbacks. The houses, the buildings that are currently there, because of the right-of-way limit of Putney Road at that point, don't meet the frontage setbacks. There's a very wide setback there, right at the motel. But other than that, they meet all the requirements.
So, are you, sorry to interrupt, you're saying the pre-existing condition is that these buildings are not set back far enough off the road to
That's
meet
correct.
to conform with current zoning?
That's correct.
Okay. And on your plan here, lot 2 is the lot that's being created?
Well, there's 3 lots being, they're all
Oh,
one
it's
lot now.
it's all one lot
It's
now?
all one lot at this point, a little less than 2 acres.
Okay.
Each building would get its own lot, and then there would be a vacant lot behind the house.
Okay.
And there's at this point, well, right now, there's a paved driveway that goes down between the 2 buildings that would service the back lot.
The right of way to the back lot?
Yes,
Okay. Are these buildings on separate water and sewer right now?
they are, yes. I believe they are. Yes,
They will need to be.
yes, I'm pretty
You
sure they are.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. If they're not, they'll need to be, and
Yeah.
likewise, the 3rd lot too,
Right.
at the back. We have some, excuse me, we have some note and also a letter from BDCC, but there's a right-of-way through this property to BDCC, or a right-of-way to this property from the rear to BDCC?
It's questionable. There's a right-of-way on the BDCC property along the back of this lot, going from, is it Brown Court, along the back of this lot to the land of CNS.
Okay.
The right-of-way was created back in the 50s. This particular lot was created well before that, and there was never a written document conveying a right-of-way to that lot. Michael LaCroix owned this lot and the adjoining lot, which is now owned by the credit union.
I'm getting a little confused between
Okay.
this lot and that lot.
Okay,
Okay, lot 1, 2.
the credit union lot is the lot to the south. Okay,
Okay.
it's not part of this. It's not part of this
Yeah.
map.
Yeah.
That lot is now the credit union lot. Okay, he owned both of those lots.
Who's he?
Michael LaCroix.
the applicant.
He
Yeah.
previously owned the credit union.
That's correct. They were all part of the same deed since the 1970s. When this right-of-way was created back in the 50s, a right-of-way was reserved for the back of the what's now the credit union lot, because part of the right-of-way goes through the credit union lot. So they conveyed them the right-of-way.
Okay.
Wait, let me just ask for some clarification here. The right-of-way the right-of-way we're talking about on the rear of the property doesn't impact this subdivision, apart from the fact that it's not shown.
Exactly.
It's not on this land.
No,
Okay, so it's to the
it's to the east.
to the east of this land,
Yep.
and where it crosses the credit union lot, it's not of concern to us at this point in time.
No, it's not. The right-of-way is not an issue. Because he's not planning on using it anyway.
When you say he's not planning on using it, you mean?
Well, for the subdivision. You're going to use the access from Putney Road.
Okay. So access on the BDCC right of way is not required for this subdivision. It's not going to be used by this subdivision.
No.
It's not a part of this subdivision.
No.
And doesn't, apart from the fact that it runs along the rear of the property, doesn't connect to this subdivision.
Right.
Okay. The right of way that is what you're calling I don't know, is this a driveway or a street? That's a deeded right of way, is it? The one through the middle of this lot?
No.
Through the subdivision?
That will be a deeded right-of-way.
Okay.
At this point, it's all part.
Excuse me.
It's all. At this point, it's all part of the one lot of the 2-acre lot.
Okay.
There's a driveway that exists at this point, which will service the back lot.
Does it service either of the other two lots?
Yes, it will. Well, it'll be part of Lot 3. It'll actually be on Lot 3, and whether or not he's going to give it a right-of-way to the back of the house, I don't know. At this point, there are people who are living in the house that are using that driveway to get to the back of the house. There's also a driveway on the southerly side of the house, so it's not necessary to convey a right-of-way to the house. So I don't believe he's going to convey a right-of-way to the house. It will just primarily service Lot 2.
Lot 2 and 3. Oh, it's on 3.
It's on Lot 3, yes.
Excuse me. So let me clarify this. So there will be a right-of-way, a deeded right-of-way on Lot 3 to access Lot 2.
Yes.
Okay. Will the same right-of-way be used to provide water and sewer to Lot 2? Because we need to have a deeded right-of-way to provide water and sewer to Lot 2.
That's right, and I assume, I can't answer that, I don't know that answer.
We'll need to see that on a
Okay.
plan or a Mylar that gets submitted and...
Right.
Okay.
He's got to have an engineer do that.
Okay. BDCC has requested that some form of screening be placed on the boundary I guess it would be the eastern boundary
Yep.
of this lot, to provide screening from their lot, and that the right-of-way that we've just been discussing across Lot 3 is the designated right-of-way for Lot 2 and not any other.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I guess what they're asking is that the right-of-way through their property is not used as an access to Lot 2, which is what you've stated Mike LaCroix doesn't wish to do anyway.
Right.
Okay.
My question is, what's going to be done about the runoff? Because Lot 2 has part of it seems to be quite swampy, right at the corner where it meets the parking lot for the book press and the credit union. Looks like it's rather damp and moist in there for water. So from the looks of it, everything runs down into Lot 2. What are the plans for the disposition of the water? If something.
I think that will be addressed by the engineer. He's going to have to get state permits. So I don't have the information from the engineer.
Do you know if stormwater runs off the credit union site onto the Lot 2, onto these lots?
I don't believe so. I
Does it
think
run the other way?
It runs the other way.
I think it runs the other way.
It's all paved and it runs out.
So it runs off these lots onto the credit union lot?
No, the credit union lot is raised up above Lot 2.
Okay.
So all the water on the credit union lot is running off of the pavement down towards the back of the lot,
And
not onto Lot 2.
the road where it goes down in would be a runoff right down to Lot 2 also. Like I say, it looks like a major a major amount of runoff would be hitting Lot 2.
Well, there won't be any more runoff than there is now, because the access isn't going to change. I'm not, when I was there, when I did the survey, it was a dry spring. It was dry when I was there. So I can't say how much water's back in there. But yes, it does slope down from Putney Road down to Lot 2, and then it's all flat down in that area.
When it comes time to, I don't know whether this is being developed or not, but there's a requirement that our stormwater be managed so there is no net increase in runoff from a property.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's uphill to the credit union, I doubt the water's going to go up. But
No, it's not going to go that way. It's going to...
however it's managed, either in the direction of Lot 3 or east into the property of BDCC, there should be no net increase of runoff. So some form of stormwater management scheme, it sounds like some form of stormwater management scheme will be required in that lot.
Mm-hmm.
We'll also require, once you get the tax map lot numbers, we'll require those on the plan too.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions from members of the board? Any member of the public wish to speak to this application? I've got your letter, yes. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, no members of the public wishing to add to the application. Further questions? Looking for a motion? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I think.
Okay, sorry.
I think we ought to make it one of the
Conditions?
conditions that there is a little more of a barrier between the BDCC and these lots. I believe there was some put in by BDCC when they put their addition on. It was required at that time, and from what I could see when I was there yesterday, I believe there should be a little more put in case, just to keep the two lots separate.
In terms of plantings or fences, what were your proposal?
I'm sorry?
In terms of plantings, like trees or stockade fence
A
or
shrub or of
shrubbery?
I'm not, is that within our tree
Not-
cars?
Not typically in subdivision.
That lot is empty now, I assume.
It is, it's vacant.
And it's,
There's nothing on it.
What I didn't actually look at it, is it in lawn or shrubs,
It's just
trees,
kind of overgrown weeds,
overgrown weeds?
yeah. I've heard that there were trees back there at one point, but there weren't any when I was out there.
So it's essentially been left to return to its natural state, or to naturally happen, whatever happens there.
Well, I think he's keeping it cleaned, cleared out. But other than, just weeds, tall weeds, I think he's not going to let any trees grow in there at this point.
Because it was quite overgrown as of yesterday. That whole,
Was it? I haven't been
right
down
on the
there.
border, right on the border between the credit union and the book press lot.
Well, the
It was-
credit union has that row of some kind of bushes along that
Yeah,
border,
but it goes
and then it drops off down.
even further than that, and I'm wondering if there ought not be something set up for, to block it from the book press area too, because that opens right out into the book press parking lot.
Tim, subdivision approvals sometimes do have requirements for street tree plantings or shade tree plantings.
That would probably come with a site plan review if they decided to develop anything there, wouldn't that?
Yeah, but if it's residential, they won't come back to us. There'll be no site plan. They'll just
No, it's commercial.
So
is
that
this commercial?
Yes. Yeah.
Is this commercial only, or can you put a residence in there, Brian? You could put a residence in there, right?
You could
This
put
is this is a
it would be a residence would be a conditional use in this district.
so that will come back to
they
us.
will come back to us. Yeah.
Yeah, according to this, it's a house, motel, and repair shop, which exists there now, right?
So that would be the time.
That's right.
Okay.
And I would think if anybody was to build a house there, they'd want to put up some kind of screening between them and the parking lot anyway.
Well, we have the abutter right now requesting that some form of barrier. We have a request from an abutter, the PDCC, that some form of barrier be placed there to provide screening between the two. And the question is how much can we dictate that at this point? I think it's not unreasonable to require some simple plantings along there, shrubbery or something. Any other questions?
So we've got to do a waiver on the road frontage and
Well, the road frontage, it has the frontage, it just doesn't have the setback.
Setbacks existing, non-conforming. Non-conformity doesn't increase by the subdivision. In terms of the setbacks. Looking for a motion to approve application let me get this right, 2012-054 with some of the adjustments that we talked about. Seconded? All those in favour?
Aye.
401. Thank you very much.
One final question, just so I can relate it to him. Who determines what kind of screening gets put there? What is...
We'll put a note in the findings.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Call application 2012-055, Brattleboro Food Co-op. Appeal of zoning administrator's classification.
Me too.
You're stepping down anyway.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, my,
Convenient. You're out of this one.
Yeah, but I have to do
Oh, so is Craig. Thank you.
Wait,
Catherine, are you leaving us?
Yes, but
Okay.
do you mind?
oh, it's a temporary
Uh,
situation?
Looking for a motion for a temporary break. All those in favour? Thank you. Apologise.
Sorry.
Brattleboro Development Review Board meeting of wherever we are today.
May 21st.
May 21st, thank you very much.
Yes.
Call application 2012-055, appeal of zoning administrator's sign determination. Please tell us what happened here.
Well, after discussing it, we determined with Brian that there was no provision for our particular variety of sign. And so that was our original proposal to you. Although, as you could see, we had a few other items that we thought were relevant to this decision to make it easier for you. I thought it would be helpful too. It's hard to envision the scale on the building. So I had the artist's rendition, which, as you can see, has the slate completed on the side. And I put the sign scaled appropriately on the side of the building where the sign will reside.
Would you mind passing that forward to us?
Not a bit. So I think you'll see, given the scale of the building, that our sign request is pretty modest.
So this particular sign is going on the leading edge of the canopy over this outdoor area?
Yeah, it's kind of just before the canopy. There's some posts in the ground that are just before the canopy that's behind it.
It faces Canal Street?
So is it?
It faces kind of the Wilder building,
Okay.
sort of, if that's helpful.
So is it attached to the canopy or is it attached to the ground?
It's attached to the pipes that are in the ground. There may be a stabilizing bar to the canopy. I've been looking at it a lot today as they're attaching things out there
So is it a ground sign?
as we speak.
Is it a ground sign or a building sign? It's on the facade of the building.
It's on the facade of the building.
And the issue here is size. Well, apart from the fact that it's not, in some sense, it's not a conventional sign, because it's out on the front of a canopy, but we have 90 square feet.
Right.
And
For a wall sign.
our
for-
current zoning ordinance in this situation would allow 64,
For a wall sign, which it isn't,
which it isn't,
correct.
because it's not on a wall.
There's not a wall near it. Oh,
This town has the most wonderful sign ordinance.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
It takes some work. So it's not a ground sign, it's not a wall sign, it's not a roof sign, and but it's kind of attached to a canopy in some sense with some stabilizing poles.
Exactly,
And it's not a banner,
right.
and it is permanent.
It is
Why
permanent.
is it not a ground sign?
Well, I've just been told it's not a ground sign.
It's on the facade of the building.
But
So a ground sign is usually removed from the building, is it not? This is actually,
I always think of a ground sign as something that's on its own poles. This
yeah.
looks like it's on its own poles.
it's
But
a-
it's also on the facade, so it would be attached to the building. right?
How far out from the building is it?
not far. This is the rendering of the design that shows you how it's attached. If that's useful. I think that might have been in the original packet.
Here it looks like it's part of the canopy.
It's attached to the canopy, yes.
Which is attached to the building.
True. Hence the sign that's not provided for in the ordinance.
Sounds like a good option.
We have to write a new thing.
What, Brian, what's the maximum size of a ground sign in the district?
Oh, for single use, it's 6 square feet.
6 square feet?
Yeah. But this structure is part of an overall entrance canopy.
Stephen, did you pass that to me again? He's not done yet.
Is this the only sign that's under contention, this particular one?
Yes.
Or the other
It's
ones are
actually
all
the only-
conforming?
It's actually the only sign to the store. We have a window decal on the Canal Street door, and then there's a sign, lettering on the wall for the Canal Street apartment entrances that are very small.
Right there?
That's the door decal.
Tim, just to review the area, this is the largest sign in the entire building sign scheme. It's about 90 square feet. There's an additional less than 20 square feet, I think, for everything else, maybe?
Much less, yes.
Yeah, very modest sign for the other functions in the building. There's 2 uses. There's Wyndham Housing Trust's rental units, and there's the co-op. The co-op has 3 different sets of functions in the building: the supermarket, some classrooms, and office facilities. And to some extent, those will be managed independently of each other. For those 3 separate uses or interrelated uses, they're only proposing the 1 sign. So it's kind of a question of how many uses you might say are in the building. I think the most conservative would be 2 uses, and for 2 uses, you'd have an area allowance of 128 square feet. So by that standard, they're well below the overall area.
So what
that
you're
they
saying
might
with
have
all
for
the
2
uses, they could have all those different signs, but instead they're going to have 1 sign?
Yes, they're having substantially less area
That makes sense.
than they're allowed.
Well, yeah, I think for Catherine, for this application, we might consider it 2 core uses. There's the housing trust use and there's the co-op use and its various parts. I mean, at some point, how much do you subdivide that down, whether it's, the loading dock or the food sale or the community kitchen and so on and so forth. I mean, so if we treat 2, they're still underneath. If we treat it as 2 uses, they are still underneath the aggregate sign size of 2. There are no other signs proposed at this point. This is it. Questions from the board? Any member of the public like to speak to this application, this appeal? I'm going to propose that we treat this sign as a sign that's not otherwise defined, or whatever the language is. I'm looking for a motion to overturn, is it, Brian? Overturn the zoning administrator's decision.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour? 400. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Spoomers, would you mind? Call application 2012-057, Marble Dealership. Please come forward. You could give us 90 seconds to
locate ourselves.
Yeah, there are. Missing members. Please tell us about the application.
Okay, tonight we're here to talk about the auto mall, and they want to essentially bring the building more into compliance with GM requirements, particularly the aesthetics and so forth, exterior of the building. They're proposing to put on a new facade on the front of the building, which you have elevations on. In addition to doing that, they are going to construct a sidewalk along Putney Road, as all the new businesses up there have to, and add some landscaping along Putney Road and along Technology Drive. The landscaping along Putney Road is lower shrubs. We can't put any trees in there because, if you've been up there, you probably remember there's some really large utility lines running through that area, which there were trees in there, which I understand were cut by the utility company. So that's why there's no trees in the front. But there's substantial addition of shrubbery here. We are adding 5 trees along Technology Drive. In addition, the lighting is being modified. There are fixtures on the building and on some of the poles that face directly out, spotlight type fixtures that are being removed. And on the building, new fixtures, LED type fixtures are being added, and you have the light information on this drawing that you have in front of you. The pole lights, which have been there for a while, actually, the poles have been there a while, but I understand that Efficiency Vermont came through a couple of years ago, and they changed all the fixtures in those poles to make them much more efficient and so forth. So there's no intent to change any of the lighting in the parking lot because of that. The other issue from our point of view is signs, your favorite subject. What is being proposed is on the front face is, and you can see this in the elevation, is the standard Chevy, Buick, GMC logos, and also the word Auto Mall. And what we have done is we've measured those, and they make up 96 square feet. Okay, in fact, we had to downsize the Auto Mall sign slightly to make it fit.
And what's the bad news?
That's the good news. That kind of fits the ordinance, okay?
Oh.
All right. The other issues that we have, there are 2 ground signs out there, one of which we're proposing not to do anything with, which is the GM ground sign that says GM and Buick and so forth. That's the northerly side. The southerly sign is actually more than one sign. There's several signs. We're proposing to remove those signs. What's there now? Proposing to remove that group of signs and put one sign in its place. It's 32 square feet, which essentially makes the sign size in conformance with the ordinance. The one that you see in the back here represents the size of the sign. What we've asked for here and this may change, but we've asked for a changeable copy, electronic changeable copy sign in that 32 square feet. So essentially what we're doing here is we're asking to become more in conformance with the ordinance.
And the sign, the existing sign is 60 square feet?
It's more than that. It's 60, 30.
Well, 60. Just
yeah,
the,
it's
just
106
the top portion.
essentially.
Do we allow changeable signs, or is it the state that has the problem with the changeable signs?
We allow them in this district.
Yeah. Didn't the Walgreens run into a bit of a hassle with the state of the town?
Well, they're not allowed in that district. I'm not
Okay.
sure
All right.
how they got one. And we also don't allow them to change the copy except every 15 minutes.
In that district or in this district?
In any district.
Okay. So you can't have a rolling sign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it is permitted, changeable signs in this district?
Yes.
Okay.
And it appears that we're going to continue to use the base and pole, actually, for the new sign. So we'll just be cutting it off and putting a smaller sign on it.
Probably what's more difficult, it's not the type of sign, it's the fact there's two ground signs. There's the current ordinance permits one ground sign.
That's correct. So what we're asking is to be more in conformance by reducing the number of ground signs, not reducing the number, reducing
Keeping the number of
size.
ground signs but reducing the size.
That's exactly right.
And the wall signs will be
the second one
conforming?
is
The
like
walls,
back here.
well, the wall sign in the front is conforming. I do have another sign I need to talk about on the building that we also have a problem with. But we'll go one at a time here, if we can.
You may as well give us the
Okay.
third piece of bad news. Because
All right, the third piece.
We're going to balance the whole thing
Okay.
somehow.
If you look at the elevation, the south elevation, it has a sign above the service bay. It says certified service. What that is now is with a lot of dealerships, when you bring the car in for service, you actually drive inside the building before you get out. I guess so you don't get out in the rain and snow and all that type of thing. And anyways, that's where you'll go into that bay for service, and that sign is above it to signify that.
How big is that sign?
That sign is just under 20 square feet. I think I figured 19 point something square feet. Now,
So you have 96 on the front and 20 on the side?
essentially, that's
Okay.
right.
They have more? Is that it?
Now, this could be considered directional sign, I'm sure. Directional signs in this district, you can have, there are 3 square feet limited to 4 signs, 12 square feet essentially. So that's our issue with that sign and how we're going to deal with that sign.
Wait, what's
You just told us.
how many
You can make it
12 square feet are
feet.
they permitted? Right.
Well,
96 or
recent
128?
applications, we've been much more stringent than that.
There's some things that don't count towards that.
That's attached to the building, that's a wall sign.
Yeah.
But, I'm sorry, if the applicant gets 128 total, wall signs, isn't 96 plus 20 less than 128? Or what am I missing?
The 128 would be the allowance for the single use for wall signs and ground signs.
Okay. What if it's more than a single use? What if auto dealership, is auto dealership different than service station, or is it just one use?
To me, it would be 2 uses.
And if it's 2 uses, does that increase the number of total
They could
square?
have up to 64 square feet of ground sign, and each use could have 96 square feet of wall signs, up to the whole of the building allowance, which is 2.5 times the building frontage.
I'm borrowing a book.
Peter, can you just, while we're digesting signage, what The access cut to the property's not changing?
Nothing else is changing.
Front yard setback's not changing?
Nothing's changing in that area. Well, the front yard setback is changing slightly because the facade is coming out, but it's well in conformance with the regulations.
Okay. There should be no vehicles in the in the first 25 feet of setback from the street. I think we're at 20, or looks like we're at 20.
Yeah, actually the grass strip in front, let me tell you what that is, just so it gives you somewhat of a...
It does.
The existing grass strip well, at its narrowest point, that grass strip is, I'm going to say 19 feet.
What district is
Most of it's a little over 20, but there is a point where it's just a little hair more than 19 feet.
Well, just as an observation, the vehicle display area will have to move back. And looking, if you say it's 19 feet, we'll have to move back 6 feet.
Okay.
So it's behind the sign, behind the grass that's there right now. That's for vehicle display, or up front. That's what's required to conform now.
Yeah, I don't, we're not really proposing to change at this point any of the blacktop or any of the parking or anything else at the facility.
But that front section here is used for, it says vehicle display area?
It has been a display area, that's correct.
It'll have to get pulled back to be...
Is this 25 feet from the sidewalk or the street?
25 feet from the boundary, property boundary.
Yeah, from the
that's
property boundary is that dark line on there.
Oh, okay.
Just the shrubbery is right behind it. Basically, the sidewalk, proposed sidewalk is just in front of the boundary.
Yeah, all right.
Now the sidewalk, the sidewalk is going...
Sidewalk's essentially right along that property line, too. It's lining up with the sidewalk on the adjacent property.
The planning department put a note in here somewhere, I think, that's in the state right-of-way. That's
yeah.
Requires a state permit then?
It would.
Yeah. But clearly, to make it line up, makes sense.
Brian, I'm sorry, what district is the property in?
Commercial district?
Commercial, sorry, I didn't.
That's all right.
And the lighting that you have on site now, the pole lighting, is, you say it was changed by CVPS or?
No, it's Efficiency Vermont.
Efficiency Vermont. Is it LED lighting or it's all?
It's not LED because LED wasn't
around
there then. It was the most efficient thing at that point, which was only a few years ago, I understand. You know, Efficiency Vermont came to a lot of different businesses around the state, and not just this one, a lot of them in town, and went through and said, can we help you by, help you with motors, with lighting, whatever it was. And this is one of the businesses that they work with.
Tim, what is that little sign right back here? That's another ground sign, right?
Correct. I think it is. And then the lighting on the building, that's new lighting. On the facade anyway?
That's right. All the lighting on the new is going to be new on the building. And that's all, let's call it shoebox down facing type lighting, rather than, right now, it's a flat face, but it faces out. It's basically a spotlight.
It's meets the code.
Yeah.
LED probably.
The new lighting is LED.
And then on the southern boundary, you're proposing, what, 4 or 5 shade trees, or big trees on the Technology Drive side?
That's right, yes.
No change in impervious surface or
No change.
stormwater management?
No change at
or-
all.
Okay. Fire access, fire lanes hasn't changed?
It's all the same.
Is there a fire lane on the front, on the southern side of the building? Striped lane or? Normally it's all, required all the way around?
Yeah, I don't know that there's anything shown that way. I mean, there's quite an area, though, if you've been in there, people do park against the building, but there's a wide swath where people drive through,
Yep.
much wider than the normal 24 feet. I don't know what it is, but it's very wide between where they
It's
have
probably
the
close
cars.
on 40 feet, I would think.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
Access on and off Technology Drive doesn't change? You've got,
No, there's one access off Technology Drive.
and the stormwater runs into this dry well system, does it? I presume.
Yeah, there is
Catch
a...
basins.
Right, that's correct.
And then just the landscaping on the front of the, in the grass swab, whatever it is, on the front of the structure is what, low shrubbery or?
Yeah, it is low shrubbery, yes.
How do pedestrians coming off the new sidewalk get to the building?
Well, I guess they can cut across the grass, or we could potentially put a sidewalk in from the one along Putney Road towards the building. Front
I think
face.
we'll require something coming off the sidewalk towards the new entrance doors.
Sure.
That clearly indicates this is where a pedestrian goes, this is where you walk, and this is how you get there.
No restriction on the Route 5 entrance in terms of direction that you can turn?
No, not at this point.
Till the roundabout goes in.
Right.
Are they planning on taking the lot, vehicle display and storage area, is that going to go back into the, that, I don't know if you want to call it a swale area where they put their snow? Is that going to go back any further, or is that going to just pretty much stay where it is?
Everything is going to stay the same as far as the operation, to my knowledge.
You mean in the rear of the building?
Way back.
Way back? Okay.
Because that's where they push the snow into that area now. It's got a gully in there for the snow, or for the water to, a catch basin type thing.
Is an accessory use a second use in the district? Second use in a building? Or does it have to be a separate building to be an accessory use?
No, it doesn't.
The definition of a motor vehicle sales includes vehicle repair as an accessory use. There's a primary use as a motor vehicle sales. There's an accessory, permitted accessory use as motor vehicle repair. So arguably there are two uses in the building. If you go to two uses in the building, we could have 128 square feet. And each building is allowed two sign types, so we could arguably get the number of the number of
To 4?
Each,
like
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, each of the uses gets one ground sign. You get one of them into conformance, and then you get, and each of the building gets 2 other uses as well. So presumably,
Is the
That use and
dealership
that
ground
use.
sign out of conformance now? Is it more than 64 square feet?
Yes, it is. I'm not sure what it is, but it's more than 64.
the one
Or
that's
or it's more than 32 or whatever.
the one that's staying, or
The one that's staying, yeah.
And you get an additional 32 square foot allowance for the second use, but you don't get an additional ground sign.
No.
No, those are always limited to one per parcel.
What is the face of the building? What's it, is it going to look like? Is it a plain grey? I mean, I'm trying to think. It meets Chevy design
It's
standards.
actually like a light blue.
Light blue.
Light blue is the panels, like a sky blue.
Okay. And Peter, the 3 signs on the front, Automall, Chevrolet and GMC, the Automall obviously is specific to the dealership, but the other 2 are standard GMC signs.
Yes, right. Yep.
Type A, Type B, Type C, whatever. Size A, size B, size C. And the sum total on the face of the building is not in excess of 96 square feet.
That's correct. In the application, we outlined exactly the square footage of each of those.
I missed that.
I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't. I did read it, but I missed it. And the ground sign is non-conforming. The first ground sign, or the dealership ground sign, is non-conforming. Something in excess of 64.
Is almost considered one sign?
Now, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's 106 square feet there on that one.
Coming down to 32.
Yeah,
Coming down to 32.
right.
Again, what we're trying to do here is to bring it in more conformance with the ordinance.
We seldom mentioned Herrick rule. Seems to be in play.
Yeah, maybe. There is no Buick sign, correct? On the plan, in the application, you took about a Buick sign.
Yes, there's a Buick, GMC,
Right.
Chevy, and there's the Automall.
Where's the Buick, or do I just not recognise it? It's the three little badges.
It's right beside the GMC.
It's the medallions.
The medallion. So we're looking at that as a combined sign, are we? No.
No,
Two
I
separate
measured,
signs.
I measured each of those themselves, and that all came to 96 square feet.
So you actually have 4 on the face of the building.
Does it look better?
As I recall, you had this situation before, and that's a situation that you thought met the spirit of the ordinance.
I would see that. I'd see that as one sign.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Grouped together like that.
We just did the same thing on the other garage that we let go.
Yeah, we let 4 there with under 96 on the face of the building. I don't have a problem with that. And we're treating the sign on the side as the certified service centre as a separate wall sign.
Permissible as
Secondary use.
As an accessory use, because it is accessory to
What
the
is it? Is there
main
there's a
motor
sign?
vehicle.
Is there another sign next to it? It's got. What's it say? Hours of operation. Next to the certified service bay.
I believe there probably is, yeah.
Is it a window?
You guys know what
It's a
exactly?
wall-mounted sign for hours of operation.
Has the door next to it got glass in it?
No.
No, it doesn't.
Could.
What would be really good would be a door which has glass in it, and you have the hours of the operation inside the glass.
Okay.
Then it's not a sign.
Then it's not a sign.
Have we dealt with this one yet? Here in the-
No.
That one's
That one's if they
staying.
wish to keep. They wish to keep that one without changing it.
And that's how many square feet?
That is.
1,000.
That's in excess of. It's about the size of a billboard.
So
Wait,
No,
it's
it's-
keeping,
the sign is behind to the backside of the glass of the door?
Yeah.
It's not a sign.
You could put letters that say hours of operation Monday to Friday 9 to 5, Saturday Sunday.
Okay, yeah.
On the inside of the door
Yeah.
that indicate your hours of operation, and any other, in an emergency text this number
Okay.
or whatever. I mean, you can just then it's hours of operation. It's on the inside of the door. It would be a good way to deal with that there.
Okay.
And you can do it in a half glass door or whatever, or full glass door. It's up to you. Mr. Miskovich.
Yes.
What are your thoughts with regard to these ground signs?
Well, what's the
or
size of
spoon.
the one in the back? What's the size of one?
I think that here we go. Ground sign.
Yeah, the ground sign in the back, the Chevy Buick.
but isn't that replacing it on the building instead
No.
of getting rid of that?
Does,
No?
does it show that?
It
How
doesn't.
big is that the large ground sign near the building?
You got it? I didn't measure it, did you?
The one that's not
You
there.
can see it in the picture in the background here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's
Well-
the size of that?
I don't know
We don't have
what
it.
size
Oh,
So this one is going away and turning into that one.
is that being used?
They wish to keep it. They wish to keep that one
I-
as
I-
is. Let's say it's 65 or
Okay.
80, and they wish to reduce this one to a simple sign of
So
32.
32?
I would think this is a perfect application of the Herrick rule. That these are pre-existing signs, and we're not going to be able to. And the applicant doesn't really want to change the information much on the two pre-existing signs, other than to make this a conforming, changeable sign that's going to reduce the signage on Putney Road by 90 square feet.
Right.
And then install on the building wall signs that are compliant with the district. So we go from 2 non-conforming signs to 1 non-conforming sign, and that satisfies my interpretation of the Herrick rule, which is thou shalt get halfway to conforming. If we'd gotten all the way to conforming, we would have required 2 conforming signs,
Well, we would have required one to be removed.
or 1 to be removed. I think getting a pre-existing non-conforming sign into conformance gets you halfway there. Because this is a situation in which I don't want to speak for the applicant, but if we say no, you have to tear. They have by right, they can do this wall signage by and large. And this is, if it's permissive, I suspect that the response from the applicant would be rationally, well, then we'll just keep what we have, because effectively it would be better to have this and this than to tear this sign down and just be left with one.
Let me get one thing. They're allowed 1 ground sign or 2?
1.
1, okay.
If you were building this from scratch, you would be allowed one
1, okay.
of 32 square feet.
So we are going to reduce the 1 sign, the auto mall sign goes from 106 to 32.
Yep.
And the other one, which we have no dimensions on, would stay there.
Yep. And the next time they come in, we get the other one.
And the total for the wall and the ground signs are supposed to be 128?
128. For one use, 2 uses?
Total of 128 for 1 use.
One use. Yeah. So an auto dealership could have 96 square feet on the front, which they have. An auto dealership, a single business auto dealership, can also have 32 square feet on the ground sign, which they are proposing modifying one of the ground signs. What we have is a situation where they'd like to keep the other sign, which has the dealership Chevrolet car signs on it, and just leave it as is. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Does it look like this one is attached to something else?
Which one's that?
The AAA one?
That's going away.
Oh, that's part
Yeah.
of this.
This goes away,
Oh.
that goes away, that goes
Oh,
away. It's
okay,
got one
it looks
32
like
square
it's-
foot.
I know, it just
All
looked
the
like
little
it
stuff
was
goes,
in
all the
there.
stuff hanging on the side goes away. Or the whole pole goes away and gets replaced, I don't know. But one way or another, it goes away.
Okay.
Brian, you have your hand up.
Yes, there have been other board approvals of large ground signs that are out of conformance where they have gotten partway to conformance. And what happens in that situation is every future sign change leads to another occasion where they have to get another partway towards conformance. So I think it should be made clear to the applicant that if they do get approval for 2 ground signs, the next step towards conformance would probably be eliminating one of the ground
Yeah.
signs.
I think that's
And
what
that
Craig is
any
proposing.
rebase on-
Yeah, either
Craig is proposing that.
either 2 conforming ground signs in the future, or maybe just one
conforming ground sign.
conforming.
Yeah. I think the applicants grasp that.
Now, in this equation, that 128, does that include that one on the sides,
Correct.
certified service?
Well, that spoon is coming under a secondary use, accessory use or secondary use signage. It could actually probably be larger than that, but that's what they're asking for. 20 feet, certified service above the door. While the board is thinking, any member of the public wish to speak to this application? Grand. We have a very
Now,
quiet.
I do have one
oh.
question, though, one additional question. What if the applicant next month came in and said, we're scrapping this whole plan, what we're bringing to you tonight, and we want to bring you a whole new, something different on the site? Are we, at this point, with this permit, can we, basically, we're going to wipe out what we're doing tonight, let's say, and came in with something different.
Mhm.
Where are we going to be with the signs at that point?
No, if you haven't
we haven't-
acted on a permit, if you haven't implemented a permit, the permit isn't binding.
Okay.
You can revert back to the previous plan.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear in our mind.
Yeah.
However, we're looking at this as, I mean, I concur completely with what Craig just said, but if you came in and said, we wish to demolish the entire site, flatten it, like Kipling Cinemas is being flattened, and we come back with a whole new proposal for a supermarket, then all bets are off when it comes to signs. You're going to have to conform as a whole new structure. I mean, we're looking at this as
As an auto dealership.
As an auto dealership that's basically having the facade changed and some landscaping work done, and bringing it up to, I think what you said is to conform with Chevrolet's dealership requirements, in some sense. But if you come back,
there may be other ways to conform with their requirements, and there may be some discussion going on in regard to that, but just as recent. And so, what I'm asking is about the signs. If they change their mind and decide not to do this and to do something else.
then they'll come back before us and we'll
Right. And
probably
this-
remember
Yeah.
what we've discussed tonight.
I think you can formally abandon a permit, okay, by notice to a zoning administrator. I recall having done something like that, just giving notice of an abandonment.
We have had at least one individual appeal the approval of their own decision, so.
We like that. We like that. You could wait 2 years and let it lapse.
That's right.
That's true. You wait 2 years.
You can wait 2 years and let it lapse.
I don't think GM's going to let them do that.
No. Just to be clear though, what we're for the applicant, there's a little bit of explanation is that which is why Peter's raised this question, is that we're applying what's affectionately known as the Herrick rule, which is not a part of zoning, which says that if you're in non-conformance, each time you come before us, we want you to come 50% closer. So assuming that this passes in the form that we've just been discussing, next time you come, in 2 years' time, getting halfway there is going to be taking a ground sign out, because you can't get any smaller. Right. So we're trying to, for 50% at a time, we're trying to get ultimately to everybody into to match zoning with the pre-existing, their pre-existing signs, conditions, setbacks, and so on and so forth. So Peter was raising the possibility that if we approve this and then you came back with a new plan in 90 days, should you, then what we've decided tonight, is that going to have impact, and would you get cut in half again? We're basically saying that if you haven't executed it, we'll go back to square one and consider it from square one, which is existing. I think that's what we're saying.
I think it is.
All right? I've said it.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, good. Any other comments from the board?
What, should there be something in the conditions specifying, or is the ordinance, how often the sign changes?
Every 15 minutes.
That's the maximum?
No greater than 15-minute cycle.
Every 15?
So you can't have the running one.
Right.
Or whatever the ordinance is. If the ordinance says 15?
It has a long list of conditions that are attached to them automatically, so.
Okay. So you can't have the thing flashing by, whatever it is, next car, for sale. It's a 15-minute cycle. It's as quick as it can change. It's not one of those rolling ones, right, where it just scrolls. Okay. Any other questions from the board? Spoon?
No.
Looking for a motion to approve application. What's my paperwork? Someone got it in front of them.
057.
I'm sorry.
2012-057.
Yeah, looking for a motion to approve application 2012-57 with some of the comments that we've talked about bound in there.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain. Anyone against? 501.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. They're all in I think there's some common form of ownership between some of these deals.
Yeah, I thought so. Maybe we should make a thing between all the
Yes.
comments. Uh-oh. So is Craig going to recuse himself? Is Craig going to do the job?
Condition proves 180
Okay.
We'll get it in there. Okay, call application.
Myself with this matter.
You are recused.
Ah.
Okay, looking for application looking for call application 2012-058. Black Mountain Estates.
Oh, we did this one, right?
Hi, my name is Jeff Brunel, and I have with me our engineer Phil Savoy and our environmental consultant Bill Jewell. We're here representing the applicants John and Lori Brunel. Basically, our goal here is to address the shortage of quality rental housing for middle-income seniors in the Brattleboro area. And the development that we're proposing is what can be called a pocket neighborhood. These pocket neighborhoods are becoming really popular across the U.S. basically, they foster social cohesion among residents by the way that the units are laid out in a compact way and an economical way. And that's one of the main things that seniors care about in choosing their place of residence. Another thing they care about is the predictability of their costs, and a lot of them that own homes or are in bigger places of residence would like to downsize. So this sort of development with compact units that are clustered tightly together is exactly what those people are looking for. Right now, the Brattleboro area really is deficient when it comes to this sort of housing, and that puts the town at a pretty big disadvantage. We've heard many stories of people leaving the Brattleboro area to go to neighboring states and towns to have access to this sort of housing. Another reason that it's good for the town is that it is a countermeasure to suburbia sprawl. Basically, obviously the clustered housing is a preferred way to have people live as opposed to having greater amounts of acreage per residence. It also limits traffic congestion and car usage, and our location is right on the bus route. It's also very accessible to exit 3 of the interstate, which will help with traffic congestion mitigation. The particular piece of land also is located very close to a lot of retail on Putney Road. It's a nice natural setting, which is a place that we think people are going to want to live in. As far as the municipal facilities go, we've spoken with the Department of Public Works, the Fire Department, the Vermont Public Safety, and we've confirmed that there's adequate utilities for this development and that the site plan conforms to the requirements of the Fire Department. And that's about it, but before we go forward, I just wanted to hand out a slightly modified site plan if I could. I don't know if anyone noticed, but the application references 41 units, but if you counted up the units, you count to only 36. And that's partly because we hadn't had a chance to shoot grades on one portion of the land, and we didn't get our site plan from our engineer until a few days ago. So really, the only difference between this plan and the other one, if you had a chance to look at the previous one, is that there are an additional 5 units which are located in the northwest portion.
I see it. Oh, I see. That's including the 3-bedroom residence?
Right.
So today we're looking at our concept approval for a PRD.
Yes.
And also preliminary or local Act 250.
There's a second easement that runs along the main access road, and that's the one that goes out to the cell tower. By main access road, I mean the one that's coming off of Black Mountain. Buttonwood Road, the private road.
Just from a concept standpoint, one of the things that we start to look for now is 2 methods of in and out, or 2 methods of access, and that's a straight down the line safety issue now, or safety consideration. Is that should one access get blocked for any reason whatsoever, there is a method of getting in and out of the site by some other means.
Well, we had talked, that issue did come up in our discussion with the planning department
Yep.
about a month ago, and we had talked about using the access road that runs down to the cornfield, and that's directly adjacent to Interstate 91, and that could easily be used as an exit point.
You can get onto 91 there?
Yeah, there's a small swale that runs along it, but
I mean, just tell me, what happens when the, I mean, I don't know how you're heating these places, but when the propane delivery truck or the fuel truck breaks down at the entrance here, how does everybody get in and out until it's towed out of there? Should it, I mean, just take that sort of simple type of, so, oh, there's an accident at the front. I mean, we're just saying that you can, I understand that emergency services may be able to, you know, a fire truck might be able to access Route 91 through that method, but the other 41 inhabitants would be contained on this site until that was cleared.
if the truck took up the entire road, yes.
Yeah. Is there an option to put something of that nature in? Well, we're at concept stage now, so we'll suggest it.
So I guess we'd have to discuss that with SIT, right?
If that's where it goes. The other access right away that comes into service there, use the cornfield through SIT. That's a farmer's access. Correct, right?
Right.
And that could be improved if we work it out with SIT for an egress from the place.
Okay. We'll just leave that as you know, this is one of the benefits of concept review, is that you get to, you know, improve things and move them around. What, there's no intent to subdivide each of these units off, is there? Or is it just, it's going to remain under a condominium structure or a single owner and each unit's rented, or?
Initially, it'll be single owner rentals. We have discussed with the town the specs for the town taking over the road later on if we did want to condoize it and have the individual unit owners. They would want the town to be up to the road to be up to town specs, and have that opportunity to have the town take it over. So I think that'll be an option down the road, but initially that's not the plan.
Okay. And at this point in time, the scheme is 41 individual dwelling units?
Correct.
You're not gluing them together in 2s and 3s and 4s for the benefit of...
We had considered that initially. We had a 4-flat preliminary concept plan. We went down to duplexes. We started polling seniors and doing market research, and that is not really a marketable product for this demographic. The people in this target really value privacy. They like the social interaction and the opportunity to see their neighbors and to take part in activities that would, be part of the community center and other common elements. But as far as their actual living structure, that's one thing that they really would not find attractive. Shared walls.
Okay. Talk to me a bit about the green space in this project.
Yeah, so we do have that area in the middle. So there's a decent amount of green space surrounding the community center. And then also when you can see when you come in, we haven't really messed at all with the land in that first section, I guess on the right side of the page you're looking at. And that's partially to have a nice green area, but also it's we need a certain distance to get the road up to the level of the development. So it kind of serves a dual purpose. Using that space just to get the road up there and leaving the spaces beside it green enables us to get up to the grade of the development and have more open space. Everyone is going to have a backyard. We plan to do I mean, obviously, we don't have the landscaping plan right now. That'll be a part of the preliminary plat, but there's going to be a lot of shrubbery and trees that we're going to plant. Around the perimeter of the property, we're not doing anything. Another reason is that it's kind of sloped, and that we also want to mitigate the sight lines from 91. So we have a berm along the southwest portion, and then we have, you can kind of think of it as a volcano effect. You have a little bit of sloping around the perimeter of the property, which basically mitigates stormwater, noise, and gives you more sense of privacy in the development.
Where is the berm?
It'll be parallel to 91. We can point it out.
Yeah, is it the line I'm looking at? I think it's the southwest. The first contour is 355.
Yes.
And that berm would be how high? I guess what I'm asking, if the point was to shield, are you trying to shield the view of 91 or the noise from 91?
Well, I think the view is the primary concern, just because of, I'm not sure how much the town cares about this, but I'm sure Act 250 will sight lines to the property from 91. So that's the first, that's probably the main priority, and the secondary priority would be the noise. So this will mitigate some of the noise from 91 coming into the development.
Would it be useful if there was a fairly thick or tight row of fairly tall, I've seen that they're almost like hedgerow trees. They run 20, 30 feet high, like some kind of an evergreen.
Yeah, are you thinking on top of the berm or in front of it?
Well, just enough. I mean, it's not really. It's up to the people who want to live there, I guess, ultimately. But the noise is considerable.
Right.
Well, you should know that trees don't cut noise as effectively as the berm. Berm is much better.
Well, I would think so. Yeah, I understand that, but the berm doesn't seem like it would be high enough to make much difference.
It's straight line from the source. So when you're coming from the road up, it's the berm and keeps going up over the houses.
Okay.
What's the elevation of 91 then on this plan? How much are we going up from 91 to?
Well, Black Mountain Road's around 320, 315, 320 at the bridge, a little higher than the entrance to this property. So we'll call that 320, and the bridge is probably 20 feet tall, so I'd say 300.
So the top of this slope is already running at what, 365, 370? So you're already substantially above.
Yeah, no,
You're substantially above Route I-91 anyway.
Yeah, but some of the houses that were level would still get a lot of noise from the road, from the south, from the straight line from the south.
It's considerable. I went up there on a Sunday morning when there would have been fairly light traffic, and it's just a constant hum of some. And I know it's right by. I mean, millions of people live near interstates and elevated subways and every other thing, and they just, you just learn how to tune it out as much as you can, and you do.
Yeah, you do. I can personally attest that. I've lived on the land for the last 2 months. I never think about the noise.
Railroads and stuff like that, but still, you do think about it. On a nice, quiet summer evening, you go outside, and you generally don't notice it, but those few times you go out and suddenly you hear it again, and one truck comes roaring by. But if the berm will mitigate some of that, I mean, just...
I think the berm will, and when you drive if you drive onto the property right now, there's two existing houses, and the one you see first is about as close as the closest house in our proposed development is going to be. So if you were to stop there and kind of think, what's the noise like here? Yeah, I mean, that's a consideration. It'll be less than it is right now with the berm. But if you drive back to where the majority of the houses are, I mean, you're obviously getting farther and farther away from the interstate. I don't know how considerable it will be back there, but you're absolutely right. It's a factor.
So you're removing both of the houses?
Yes.
One other thing, again, as a person who walks, what popped right out is that there is nothing in the plan as of yet for a path. The first one that strikes me would be on the east side. You go from the entrance way. There's actually a line there now for some reason. It's if you go to the sort of the main entrance towards the parking area, community center, and then go to the east, the right, about 3 houses. There's a line that runs down to the road for some reason. I don't know what it means. And that looks like it ought to be a pathway through there. At least half the people living there would find that very convenient. You see what I mean?
I'm not sure what you mean, Spoon.
All right. Go into your access road up to the entrance that goes into the parking area.
To here?
Yes. Now, come down into the inner circle,
Yeah,
right where your finger is.
yeah,
Maybe one more house down.
yeah.
A pathway that went from there to the entrance all the way at the bottom, straight down.
Yeah.
It's a very, very mild slope. It's
Yeah,
where
it won't
people
be.
would want to walk naturally.
It won't be because we have to get the road to 8%.
Well, there is going to be a sidewalk that's going to run parallel to the road.
I know that.
And this is like 3 to 1. Yeah, that's like 30% or whatever it is. When we're done, that's going to be about 30%. So that's really steep.
That was my question, is what the grade is going up into that.
Yeah, the grade of the road is going to be 8 1/3%, which is ADA code, and then the grade of the development is going to be 4%, which is also ADA.
Because it was interesting going up there on the motorcycle yesterday.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to envision right now, but yeah, we've accounted for that.
Would it be maybe advantageous to put a slight curly Q in your road so it's not a straight shot up?
This is as curly Q as we can get and make the grade. This, we've tried at every angle. We've tried it straight up. We can't do it. We can't get to 8% unless we bring it along the side here. It follows the current path for a little ways, but we have to come up on a gentler grade, which the only thing we have is to the left of the existing first house is where it's shown. Anywhere else coming up, we can't get 8% without a major cut.
And I have another question. Are you, when you go up that road, this new map has got that little bubble on the sort of the northwest side of it with the extra houses on it. Is that whole thing going to be on the side of a hill, or are you filling that valley in down there, or what's happening?
Yeah, so that's probably what Todd looked at, but the grade of the land at 4%, that's 4% is very gentle, by the way, but by the time you get to the back of this parcel, you know, you're up to a significantly higher elevation than you are at the front. And that gets us up to a developable kind of plateau back there. So these houses will be elevated from the other houses in the development, but they're not going to be on a steep bank or anything like that. Did I answer your question? Or?
Like I say, I was up there yesterday, and it looked like quite a valley in there because he had the shed down in there. And
There'll be some fill in there. And we didn't put the houses in the area that's being built.
Will the roof of the carport support solar panels? If that time ever came, it looks like it would be really ideal for that kind of thing.
Well, that's something we can certainly investigate. I actually just started correspondence with a solar panel expert a few days ago.
I got a few more. Just talk about the storage lockers, the storage units. You've got storage units up on the top level.
Right.
There's 15 storage units. I think in the plan it talked about 41.
Yeah, I think this could be 15, 10 by 20. I think 10 by 20 is probably a little bit off here. It'd maybe 10 by 10, and so you'd have 30. And when we put that together, the application, we pictured every unit having access to the storage facility.
Can you not incorporate the storage lockers in each structure, rather than having a separate thing? I mean, just provide that extra 20 square feet in every building.
Well, they have a carport.
So is a carport adequate instead of a storage locker?
No, it's not going to be enclosed, and we're also going to have restrictions against people, putting their stuff out in the open. But with the storage, it's not an extra 10 or 20 square feet. It's fairly considerable from a construction cost standpoint to tack on an extra 100 square feet to the units, and just having a separate storage facility really lowers the construction costs.
Okay. And the intent is what, to have one storage locker, or roughly one storage locker per dwelling?
Yeah.
So those won't be, it's not intended to rent those out to third parties, it's just going to be tied to each property?
Correct. The individual unit renters will have the opportunity to rent a storage locker. Yes, but nobody from the outside, no third parties will.
Okay. I want to go back a bit on the green space thing. One of the things that we try and do, or we have tried to do, where we've considered PRDs before, even if they've not been built, is to really work the design so that green space or common space and common land and things like that, depends on the terminology, is an integrated part of the design. This looks to me like you've taken an approach at this point of how many properties can I get on here, what's the topology of the land, lay it out, and the green space has just kind of come about around the edge of the properties. What can we do with this arrangement to provide more common green, really build that common green space in to the project?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that presents a dilemma. You have to balance the goal of creating that green and open space with the financial viability of the project. And for me, when I think about how this project is going to work financially and trying to fit in the extra green space, the only ways I see of adding more green space or more open space would be to cluster these units further, meaning create common walls and have duplexes or quads or whatever that may be. For us, that means that the end product is not marketable. Thus, the numbers don't work. So we start off by saying, I really believe that we need to have the individual units. And then the second thing would be eliminating some of the units. The reason why that's really difficult to do from a financial perspective is that the upfront costs of developing this are really significant when you take into account just the physical redevelopment of the land acquisition itself, the permitting, and then running the property taxes in Brattleboro are significant. So the idea is every time you eliminate a unit, you have fewer units to spread out those considerable fixed costs across. You have fewer streams of income. So, I mean, I understand, and that's definitely part of the ordinance. I think that there is a reasonable amount of open space. And then in addition to that, there's a lot of green space. And it's going to be a very natural green setting, I think, and that's in the spirit of the open space, I feel like. And that's in the spirit of the town plan, as far as maintaining the character of Vermont and of Brattleboro when planning these developments.
Have you thought about putting in a community garden at all?
Yes, absolutely. Community garden, you could also have gardens in the backyards, but I believe a community garden is a great idea. A picnic area, walking paths. We have this tennis court in here right now. That's going to depend on what the people want, but there's definitely going to be some outdoor recreational activities. A community garden is something that's really popular these days among our target audience.
I'd like to see a more proactive approach to creating green space in here by tightening up. You know, if they all need to be what we call single family or detached, I call detached, which means there's no common walls. Then maybe the clustering pattern tightens up somehow to work green space in there. I could just tell you there is one other development in town, Arbor Hill. I don't know whether you've looked at Arbor Hill, but Arbor Hill is, the townhouses there are all attached to each other. The larger development is, I don't know how many units is in there, 16 units on 2 floors, I believe. Has common gardens out the back. It's not quite the same as what you're doing here, but that is not lacking tenants or owners. I mean, it's solidly filled, and part of the, I actually rented a unit there myself in 2004, short term. I was too young to rent, by the way, but I managed to get away with it. I was under the 55 limit, but some of the things that if you talk to the residents of that thing that they were looking at, they had common maintenance of the property, they had common hot water, common heat. All of this stuff was taken care of on a larger structural basis, because it's shared facility and you get the economies of scale because you're doing that. So I know you've said that you've looked at it in terms of duplexes or quads, but perhaps there's a balance in here that it's not all singles, and you can tighten it up a little with some 2s and some 4s. Or again, of course, the cost of construction may change considerably when you're not doing something which looks like it's fairly repetitive units in here. But if you go back to the kind of common space or the green space thing, to really engineer that in, so that it's not just down to everybody's individual garden.
One of the things, I don't know if this is, but if you look at your scheme, I guess would be looking towards the northwest end where you have your storage units. You have a row of houses right beside them, and then the next row to the east is all facing an access road. If those houses turned around, that access road could disappear, couldn't it? And you'd have considerably more.
Maybe there's a grade issue there, Spoon, isn't it?
Backyard space. Well,
I don't know.
It's not showing it. It's as steep going one way as it is the other, it seems.
I think the problem there was building houses on fill.
Oh,
you don't want to put, when you're going to fill that gorge up, you'd rather have a road on the gorge, not the houses. The houses are on native soil.
Well, that's a good thought, Spoon. We'll definitely take a look at that. And Bill might be right that we're kind of precluded from exploring that option based on what he said. But there may be a way of eliminating some of the roadway so that we have more opportunity for the open space, open green space.
I have just another question. What's the soils like out here, Bill? I mean, this is all going to drain fairly well. We've got stormwater management issues with this going in here, particularly with the grade.
It's just supposed to we got to deal with extra hard surfaces.
Yep.
It's really sandy. It's kind of like, well, it's not a sand dune. It's like road sand.
Good drainage.
Good drainage.
So just you'd have to deal with you got the 8% grade on the road. You got to get the water to run off the road and disappear into swales
we
or.
have several schemes. The engineers are working several schemes to deal with because the brook there is already overloaded with silt, so we have to be very careful about not adding.
What's the brook on that side? Is that Cosbury?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's that? One of the brooks in the state that's under.
Yes.
Yes. Emergency watch.
Am I not mistaken that this site actually has a long history of starts and stops?
No, that's the other one. That's to the north.
Oh, there's one up a little further?
Yes.
It actually has a
That's the one
foundation.
I came in here 4 times for the 4 different permits.
In terms of Local Act 250, there's some kind of covenant on the rentals that puts the age group at 55 and over. Is that proposed? Did I read that in there, or is that?
That is the plan at this point. We haven't explored that from a legal perspective and what is entailed with that, but that's the idea, is to target this to seniors and retirees, and that would be one of the ways that we do that, is restricting the age.
Can I say something on that? My in-laws moved from this area to Phoenix, Youngtown, which was a senior community. All of a sudden, all these seniors started to pass on, and the property went to their kids, and the kids were trying to move in there. They finally had to move it as not a senior town anymore because they had so many younger people moving in that they had to change that because of the property being dispersed to the wills and stuff like that.
Yep. To have a age-restricted community, you have to have at any given point at least 80% of your residents need to be at or above your age-restricted level. So the difference with this is that these are rental units, so there'll be less of a need for people to pass on the unit to their heirs. Or
it's going to be a rental type thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also know, but that wouldn't apply to this, a large community, also an over 55 community, but it was, the homes were owned, but it was also covenants and all that. Well, the economy got bad, and a large number of grandparents were now housing one of their kids. It just didn't work. They had nowhere else, to go. They couldn't make it on their own. I also, though, wonder. I certainly see restrictions on age in some sort of an assisted living. But I find it. I ask myself, would I ever want to live while I was still healthy in a community without age diversity? It's. I wonder. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I'm not so sure older people want to be so isolated.
That's interesting. I mean, that's a different view than what we've been seeing.
Yeah.
And I think really what we're looking at is developments of this nature. So our sample is a little skewed in that sense. I think people who maybe have that sort of predisposition that you're talking about, we're not considering those in the population that's entering these developments. They're staying in their homes, in their communities, and they're experiencing that diversity, I suppose. But just the sheer number of these communities popping up around the country suggests that there is a decent amount of people, a sufficient amount of people to justify developing like this.
Yeah, I concur with you, actually. I think there's a valid reason for it. And the factors behind it are there's this size. People don't want to live in 2,500 square foot homes. They want to come down to a manageable, whether it's 900 square feet.
Small homes is great.
And then controlled costs to know exactly what it's going to cost me. It's important because you move into at a certain age, whether it's 55 or 60 or 65, whatever it is, you move into a time where you have fixed incomes. A lot of people do, and with fixed incomes, you need to know, or it's good to know.
And so
what you've managed.
The property management mows all the lawns and takes care of all the landscaping.
Correct.
And that sort of stuff.
So, assuming that this, I'm not saying this is a retirement community, but we've got to look at impact on the educational system. Impact on the educational system may well be minimal if it's unless all the grandparents get grandkids to look after.
No, but there'll be restrictions on how many people and how old they are living in the community. I mean, it has to be that way for this to be an age-restricted community. So, no, there won't be a bunch of grandchildren.
Public Works, in terms of the municipality, water and sewer, we have adequate. Public Works has confirmed we have adequate water and sewer to support a.
Yes, we met with Rick Ethier and Gary King and discussed those things.
A development of this nature within our existing infrastructure.
Yes.
Okay. Clearly, it conforms to the town plan. I think the town plan would love. The town would love a quantity of small developed homes, residential units. I don't know, is there any other impact on the municipality that we have to consider under Act 250? That you can see from this? I mean, it's impact on municipal services. Bill shaking his head. No. Well, no,
it's all within the normal.
It's all within the normal run of things.
And it really does. I mean, there was going to be the other project up above this that had 65 units in it. So since that's not there, then we can get that application.
Okay.
Will the size of the community center have a room that would hold everybody?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it's part of the ordinance, but or part of guidelines for developments of this nature. But the community center, the size of it will be in relation, proportional to how many units we have. But yes, that's the idea, is that we could have functions where every community member comes and maybe some of their friends.
And will it have a kitchen?
That's not in the plans right now, but that's a possibility. We'll have to look at how much in demand, meals. I mean, we can have Meals on Wheels come. That's something that the senior center does. It's fairly popular, but as far as actually making meals on site, I'm not sure if that's gonna justify the cost of adding a kitchen to the community center. We would probably have a small fitness room in the community center, and perhaps a room that would function as a first aid room or some sort of emergency medical room where people could receive treatment, or perhaps come in and get their blood pressure taken and things of that nature. So we are going to certainly configure the community center to make it useful and attractive to all the residents. That's going to be a key focus.
The bus will come to the end of the access road, is that the idea?
Yes. We will discuss with the town the possibility of the bus coming up into the development, but we can't guarantee what they're going to say regarding that right now. But they do come. The bus does run along Black Mountain Road, right by the access road at this point.
I mean, that's a major concern of people in this age group. As to how long are they going to be able to continue to drive?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, there will be sidewalks along that road, and likely have some sort of enclosure at the base of the access road for people to wait for the bus.
And the other big buzzword right now is high efficiency. In terms of heating, and particularly heating. That's something I'm sure you're going to be looking at.
Yeah, and the applicants, my parents, John and Lori Brunel, have owned Brunel & Son Construction for 22 years. And high efficiency construction is something that they're very familiar with, and that's certainly going to be a part of this design.
What's the insulation like in these houses?
That's a good question. I wish my dad was here. He could answer that for you.
I think perhaps a broader question is to deal with, I'm going to assume for a second you're going to build these things as efficiently as you can, but it's that we have certain requirements under, maybe not conditional use, which this isn't, but it's a PRD. So, but the use of renewable resources, and Spoon touched earlier on solar panels. I'm not sure whether it's only just solar panels that you might want to consider for this, but distributed heat schemes, conceivably, geothermal, conceivably. I mean, there's a number of areas within this development where you could look at making it as efficient and as cost-effective as possible. I mean, it may not be practical, I know, but
it's worth exploring.
You just, I would encourage you to look at it.
Yeah.
Any other questions, members of the board?
You get that many houses together, a single heat source might be a possibility.
Yeah, you could build a little nuclear station.
What was that?
I said you could build a little nuke,
Oh,
little
yeah,
nuclear
right.
station, power the whole lot. Localized nuke.
Mm.
I don't think that would go down that well in this town.
No, I don't think so either.
But certainly, there's distributed energy of all sorts of,
I have a problem with this paragraph in here, where it says lack of affordable housing limits the availability of workers, blah, blah, blah.
What is this?
And then it says the lack of upper scale homes discourages persons of higher income to move into Brattleboro. That's not affordable housing.
Where's this? Where?
It's in their sheet, right here.
Okay. Page up.
This, right here. It's in the
Form N?
packet. It's in the packet with the pictures.
Well, just in response, that is not our actual wording. That's something that I pulled from the Planning Services Department, Brattleboro Town Plan.
Okay.
Just to respond to the question in the application on Form M that says that the project is in conformance with the Brattleboro Town Plan. So I was really just looking for basically sentences, paragraphs within that town plan that were somewhat relevant to this. But you're right, this is not affordable housing in the strict sense that it's not going to be at a rent level that people that are eligible for Section 8 and other government assistance would be able to afford. It's more moderate to medium income.
What do you see as a house like this renting for about $1,200 a month?
That's certainly in the ballpark, yes.
But the way I see it in Brattleboro, there is a great need for housing in this area and range for this town.
We have no members of the public left to talk to. We do have an attorney in the audience, but he's not prepared to comment on this application, I somehow feel, or on this concept review. Lawyers aren't people? No, you're not public. Perhaps that's more. Not the public, very public. Any other questions from the board? Okay, we're looking. I'm going to look for a motion to approve for concept review and Local Act 250 for 2012-058 with the comments that we have made broadly from the board in terms of access, green space, clustering, reconfiguration of potentially of site plan. I mean, you will be back to see us at some point,
Right.
in the future. So, looking for a motion to approve application 2012-058.
So moved.
Seconder? Seconder Spoon. All those in favour?
Aye.
400. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with it. Okay, now we move on to any other business. Any other business, anybody? No further business?
I move we adjourn.
Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay, Mr. Spoon has something to talk about.
Yeah, what do you actually have in mind on that little piece with the application by BDCC? They wanted screening, and you put that in.
Yep.
And the applicant said, who's screening what from what? We can start. I feel like somehow we approved something that we really didn't think through. And you said, you just kind of blew it off. You said, well, I'll write something in the decision.
Yeah,
what are you going to write?
When at the development of the property, lot 2, whatever it is, that screening is provided between that and the adjacent property.
Well, what if he puts in a 2-foot high hedge level?
It's a 2-foot high hedge level.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, you know, we talked about what was I saying? What you call that fence? Picket fence, not picket fence. Stockade fence. Yeah, the shrug was, you know, it doesn't warrant stockade fence, but just add vegetation.
All right, he's all right. That's it. Just okay. That's fine. If that's what he can do, that suits me.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
500, 500, 501.